Hey guys, tonight we're not sailing with pirates. No creaking ships, no salt-soaked boots, no suspicious parrots staring at you like they're about to report your secrets to the captain. Instead, we're squeezing into something much tighter, much louder, and somehow way more chaotic than any pirate ship ever was. A Soviet Communalka, the communal apartment system that redefined personal space by eliminating it almost entirely. So before we wander into the narrow hallways of shared everything, shared kitchens, shared bathrooms, shared gossip, and shared existential dread, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of quiet, cozy, mildly claustrophobic bedtime history actually helps you drift off. If not, totally fine. Even Soviet neighbors didn't agree on everything, especially not on whose turn it was to clean the stove, who stole the paprika, or who kept leaving mysterious hairs in the shared bathtub. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and if you're here, you're probably trying to fall asleep to the comforting thought that at least you don't have 10 neighbors lined up outside your bathroom door. Now dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soft white noise breeze, get comfortable, and maybe tuck your feet under a blanket, not because of rats this time, but because an imaginary Soviet babushka might scold you for letting the warmth escape. Unlikely, but historically plausible. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what life actually felt like when privacy wasn't just rare, it was basically illegal? When walls were thin, floors were loud, and the hallway knew more about your life than your own diary? What did it feel like to cook in a kitchen shared by 4 families, each one guarding their shelf of ingredients like dragons? To label your milk with your initials only for someone to accidentally drink it anyway? What did it feel like to wait for the bathroom in a line so long you could finish War and Peace before your turn? To overhear everyone's arguments, jokes, confessions, and bathroom habits, whether you wanted to or not? What was it like to live in a place where space was rationed like sugar, where an entire family might sleep in one room while the hallway outside buzzed like a beehive of shared daily life? Tonight, we're going to drift into that world, not to judge it, not to glamorize it, but to feel it softly. The muffled clatter of pots in the kitchen, the smell of cabbage deciding to become a permanent resident, the low hum of a radio drifting through paper-thin walls, the quiet laughter of neighbors who, despite everything, still found ways to live, love, argue, complain, and survive together. So take a slow breath in. Let the noise of your day fall away, and imagine a long corridor lit by a single yellow bulb, a place where life wasn't private, but it was undeniably human. Settle in, close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. The Corridor That Never Belonged to You. And now, as your breath settles, and the noise of your day softens into something gentle and distant, let's drift into a hallway where privacy was a luxury and silence was something you borrowed, not owned. Picture this, a dimly lit, narrow corridor in a Soviet Communalka, a communal apartment building where dozens of people shared not just walls, but air, arguments, cooking smells, and the occasional existential sigh. The wallpaper tells the first story, layer upon layer, floral, geometric, striped, a history of tenants stacked like geological strata. Each family added its own pattern, its own attempt at beauty, pasted directly over the last. Now, the edges peel like tired petals, curling away from plaster that has seen decades of winters and more whispered conversations than any hallway should endure. Beneath your feet, the parquet flooring is worn to soft grooves, not polished, not level, just shaped by footsteps, thousands, tens of thousands, the slow erosion of daily life. Children running to the kitchen, grandmothers shuffling to the stove at dawn, workers trudging home after shifts that lasted a little too long and paid a little too little. A single yellow bulb hangs from a frayed cord overhead, barely strong enough to push back the shadows. Its light flickers once, twice, as if considering whether it has the energy to keep glowing tonight. Electricity here works when it feels like it, much like the neighbors. And in this corridor, in this in-between space that belongs to everyone and no one, stands a citizen, quiet, patient, waiting. They are waiting for the bathroom, a room shared by perhaps 3, perhaps 5, perhaps 10 families. The numbers blur when you're tired, and when the line stretches longer than your evening patience. They stand very still, hands folded, eyes half-lidded as the shadows dance around their shoes. The steam from someone else's shower seeps under the door, mixing with the smell of cabbage from the kitchen and the faint, permanent scent of damp plaster. From behind the door comes a symphony that everyone in a communalka knows well. Running water, clattering pipes, rushed brushing of teeth, and the hurried movements of someone who knows at least 4 people are waiting for them to finish. The citizen sighs, not loudly, just softly enough that the corridor absorbs it. Privacy here isn't a right, it's a concept, theoretical, delicate, almost mythical. Every room has ears, every wall has opinions, every shared space carries the weight of other people's routines, frustrations, jokes, and secrets. A kettle whistles somewhere down the hall. A radio crackles with the evening news. 2 neighbors argue in sharp whispers about who forgot to clean the stove. A child laughs. Someone hums. Someone else mutters about ration lines. Life happens here all at once, overlapping, intersecting, like threads in a tapestry woven
too tightly. The citizen shifts their weight. The bulb sways. The floor creaks. The shadows move like soft currents of history. And yet, for all the inconvenience, for all the crowding and discomfort, there is something human here, a strange warmth hidden within the chaos, a sense of shared existence, shared burdens, shared mornings, shared nights. Because in this long corridor, beneath this dim yellow light, wrapped in wallpaper older than memories, people learned how to live together, not perfectly, not peacefully, but persistently. The bathroom door finally clicks open. A burst of warm steam escapes, rolling into the hall like a tiny, exhausted cloud. The citizen steps forward. Another steps into line. And life continues, quiet, crowded, communal, in the corridor that never truly belonged to anyone. Chapter 2. The Kitchen Counter Conundrum. Congratulations! You've just awoken in a cramped Soviet kitchen circa 1975, where the air is thick with the scent of something you can't quite identify, but your guess is it's either a delightful culinary experience or a potential hazard. This tiny space is more like the epicenter of community gossip than just a cooking area. It's where secrets are traded like baseball cards, and your relationship with the neighbors reaches ninja levels of stealth and scrutiny. The kitchen counter is precariously covered with a carefully prepared spread that could only be described as a Soviet culinary treasure hunt. A vibrant carrot and cabbage salad that's more colorful than your family reunion photo. Pickles that could double as bric-a-brac in a museum exhibit called Preserving Things You Wish You Hadn't. Black bread so dense it could be used as a paperweight, and a small cake that resembles a delightful yet suspicious block of concrete. This particular combination has been procured through a complex maze of shortages and workplace distributions. If you thought navigating IKEA was tough, you've never attempted Soviet grocery shopping. Raise your hand if you've ever had the delightful experience of tracking down ingredients like they were the last known tickets to a Taylor Swift concert. Only here, the ingredients aren't just FedExed to your door. You've got to outmaneuver queues of hopefuls, leapfrogging over grumbling grandmas, and practicing your best poker face as you trade gossip for a singular onion. Ever considered your grocery list might be better suited to a spy thriller plot? Picture your day-to-day reality. You're in line at the market, only to overhear a conspiracy theory about whether your neighbor's cat has received state certification for espionage. You laugh, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you wonder whether your carrot salad recipes have been passed along to the secret police. As you bag your single carrot and hope they don't run out of cabbage too soon, you wonder if your neighbors think you're crafting a culinary masterpiece or a declaration of rebellion. Once you successfully assemble the ultimate communal meal, honestly a feat worthy of an Olympic medal, you and your guests squeeze around that kitchen counter with the intimate proximity typically reserved for a dystopian reality show. The table might be crowded, but the atmosphere feels lighter than a feather floating on a summer breeze, assuming that breeze doesn't come from your cousin's armpits after a jog. Everybody's chattering, sharing stories about the latest neighborhood gossip, with that kind of fervor usually seen in people screaming during a workplace fire drill. And as someone begins to reach for the pickles, you can't help but think, would picking at this food fashion a new era of diplomacy between our nations? Or at least resolve the cabbage pickle debate? You chuckle as you pass the black bread, its texture resembling a dense pillow that might be great for marital disputes. Honey, I swear, it's a conversation starter. The highlight of your evening inevitably arrives when someone dramatically proclaims about the moral implications of using store-bought mayonnaise versus homemade. It's absurd, of course, but isn't that the essence of human camaraderie?
discussing life's most pressing issues while clinging to a jar of pickles like it's the last bastion of hope in a crumbling universe. You can practically hear the collective gasps as someone takes a bite of the carrot salad, the crunch echoing through the room like a stock market crash on a particularly bad day. As the plates are passed around, a surprising bond forms among your guests, deeper than any Soviet propaganda poster ever crafted. Can you imagine a simple carrot and cabbage salad spawning an impromptu debate over the merits of free trade? It'd solve our butter shortage, someone muses, only to be countered by another. But what of the pickle economy's fragile balance? Ah, yes, Soviet kitchen politics at its finest. Still, life in this post-Stalin reality exhibits its own peculiarities. You know those stories where someone wins a small fortune, inadvertently loses it all to a single awful investment decision? Well, your kitchen counter feels like that. It's a veritable gold mine of carefully constructed dishes under constant threat of being toppled over by zealous conversations or the neighbor's cat sneak attacking like a furry ninja from the shadows. The existential question arises: do you savor the moment or partake in the potentially dangerous act of enthusiasm as everyone scratches plates for yet another helping? Every nibble on that black bread carries with it an unparalleled excitement. Will the cake survive the evening? Will it be sent on a most uncertain journey marked by stray crumbs and sudden laughter? You lean back, taking it all in, the scents drifting from the kitchen, the laughter weaving through chatter like vines of a well-tended garden. You realize something profound. While privacy in this era may have been as mythical as unicorns prancing in a field of tulips, the laughter and shared stories ignited hope in the simplest of meals. So as the evening unfolds, amidst the faint remnants of the carrot and cabbage salad, you're cozily couched in a realm of elaborate debates and loving mischief. Life teaching you to appreciate moments, however absurd, because they're the threads of yesterday's history wrapped up in a hilariously mismatched tapestry. And as eyelids grow heavy, you tuck away the laughter into your cozy memories, grateful for comrades, culinary enigmas, and above all, the spirit of communal existence. Stay tuned for Chapter 27, where we delve into the fascinating realm of Soviet fashions. And you'll learn that fur hats weren't just practical, they were statement.
Pieces worthy of a runway show, if only they were modeled by someone not freezing to death while wearing one. Chapter 3: The Shared Culinary Odyssey of the Kommunalka.
Let's talk about kitchens. But not just any kitchens, oh no. We're stepping into the chaotic, steamy battleground of the Kommunalka's shared kitchen. Picture this. It's 1953, and you've just moved into a cramped Soviet apartment sharing space with your neighbors who, let's be honest, are probably making dinner as if it were an Olympic sport. You can almost hear the theme music from Rocky playing in the background as pots clatter and occasional screams pierce the air, which could either mean someone's done poorly at chopping onions, or an overly ambitious borscht has taken a violent turn. Either way, the gastronomic atmosphere is thick enough to cut. As you enter, The scent of simmering cabbage and overcooked potatoes fills your nostrils, sweet, slightly sour, and laced with the nostalgia of last week's mysterious stew that somehow hasn't left the stovetop. You glance around, greeted by a colorful assortment of mismatched pots and pans, and it feels like a thrift store exploded in here. Each shelf seems to tell a story, not that you want to hear most of them, especially from the hunched old lady in the corner who insists on serving boiled fish with a side of heavy commentary regarding her late husband's cooking techniques. Spoiler alert, there were none. And then there's this single gas stove. Yes, just one. Modified with an extra burner that looks like it was salvaged from a World War II tank. It's now the heart of this chaotic little ecosystem. It's here you realize the importance of negotiation. After all, dinner time is when you engage in a culinary game of chess. When I boil my potatoes, you'll just have to wait, you announce boldly to the stern lady next to you, a seasoned veteran of these kitchen skirmishes. She glares at you with an intensity that could curdle milk. But you both know that the stakes are high. You've got a boiling pot, and she has, well, the right to make a mean kvass. Ever tried cooking next to someone who treats their boiled cabbage like it's the Mona Lisa? The tension is palpable. It's like watching a televised cooking competition where, instead of winning prizes, you fight for your dignity and, occasionally, the last potato. But fear not, my friend, you possess a secret weapon, the iron will honed from years of living in crowded apartments, plus a little sous vide magic, but we'll get to that later. With any luck, you'll both walk away from this simmering drama with full bellies and fewer resentments. Of course, the activity isn't without its quirks. As steam rises from the pot, you can't help but wonder, have the culinary gods blessed us with food, or specifically designed this setup to spiritually challenge our patience? Ever tried to reach for a bowl at the top shelf while someone's boiling a giant vat of unidentifiable sludge below? Let's just say it's a lot like playing Tetris. Frustrating, occasionally. Violent, and someone always ends up losing a finger, or at least a small patch of dignity. As you carefully navigate this culinary minefield, a snicker slips from your lips, thinking about how this scene resembles an awkward family reunion where nobody's quite sure who cooked what. It's like a potluck dinner gone wrong, where everyone brings their worst. What dish are you serving? Oh, my signature mystery meat that even I'm afraid to identify. Just when you think you've tried it all, someone emerges with a fruit salad that can only be described as, is this fruit, or is it preserved suspiciously? A loud clang interrupts your thoughts, and you feel the collective tension rise. Someone has just dropped their precious pot of yesterday's soup onto the floor. Yes, the floor. The one still marinated in the secrets of meals past, and what you can only hope isn't slime from old food fights. What's that saying? One man's disaster is another man's recipe for future success? Well, This disaster looks a lot like a potential recipe for unforeseen gastrointestinal adventures. Let's not forget the communal fridge, a veritable landmine of leftovers and expired condiments. It has all the charm of a relic from an archaeological dig, with half-eaten jars of pickles holding 1,000 secrets just waiting to be discovered. You may find yourself trapped in a riveting debate with the fridge about who exactly needs to take out those suspicious leftovers that are quite likely plotting their escape to freedom. Spoiler: nobody wants to be the hero in that story. Eventually, as you find your spot at the table, you reflect on everything you've seen and smelled. What a bizarre but strangely comforting chaos unfolds in this room. It's a recipe for culinary disaster, a diploma in patience, and perhaps a degree in creative negotiation, all rolled into one delightfully unbearable experience. This kitchen taught everyone involved that communal living might just be the best lesson plan in a peculiar school of life, even if your peanut butter has been replaced with someone's questionable pickled cabbage for the 3rd month in a row. And with that, as you sit down to enjoy your creative interpretation of dinner, it's clear that in a communalka, home isn't just where you hang your hat. It's where you strategically dodge flying food, forget your last name, and share in the joy of marginally edible meals, while realizing that, amidst the chaos, you've somehow found your own little community. The steam rises, the laughter echoes, and as far as odd culinary collaborations go, well, at least nobody's setting off the smoke detector. Yet. Chapter 4: Frost-bitten trams and shared misery. Let's talk about mornings. But not just any mornings, oh no. We're diving into the frozen wake-up call of a 1953 Leningrad morning, where the air is so cold it can only be described as ambitious. You wake up bundled in your heaviest wool coat, the kind that feels like you're wearing a small, angry sheep. The moment you step outside, you're greeted by a chill that makes you wonder why you even bothered with pants. Every breath becomes visible vapor, drifting away into the ether like your hopes of ever being warm again. Congratulations! You've just woken up in post-Stalin 1953, navigating the bustling life of a Soviet citizen. Picture this. You're standing at a crowded tram stop, your collar turned up like a determined sailor braving the icy sea. There's a light drizzle, but calling it rain would be too generous. It's more like nature's way of reminding you about everything wrong in your life. Each droplet feels like a warning scratch from Mother Nature herself, just waiting for you to slip on the wet cement and go cascading into oblivion, or at least the unpleasant puddle in front of the bus stop. As you shuffle in place, trying to warm your fingers that are magnificently unresponsive like soggy French fries, you can't help but notice the eclectic bunch around you. It's a smorgasbord of humanity, all swaddled in mismatched layers of wool and stubborn optimism. There's the elderly man rocking a glorious fur hat so large it could probably double as a small sleeping bag. Next to him is a woman clutching a briefcase, the prized possession she probably sold her last potato to obtain, who's glaring around as if daring anyone to come within 3 inches of her safety bubble. And then, of course, There's the group of college students busily discussing the best way to smuggle vodka into their lecture hall. Their voices rise above the classical music playing faintly from the nearby storefront, where cheerful propaganda posters featuring heroic farm workers glimmer mockingly in the dreary grayness. Let's be honest, nothing says great economic system like a giant poster of a beaming farmer with 7 thumbs up, all while you mentally calculate how many potatoes you'll have to trade to make it through the week. You lean against the tram stop's cold metal signpost, which, if looks could kill, would likely be a suspect in the recent local ice-capades. As you stand there, you wonder about life in a Soviet apartment. If the walls could talk, would they sing the praises of that old lady neighbor who insists on making contributions of pickled cabbage to the communal fridge? Or would they simply sigh in exasperation as they recount tales of kitchen dramas and water shortages? But wait, let's dive deeper. Have you ever thought about how it might feel to live in a world where your privacy is less a given and more like an ancient legend? You see, in this delightful era of shared apartments, your personal space is about as recognizable as the recently discovered Atlantis. You may have one tiny room where you can spread out your collection of uninteresting trinkets and questionable mementos, but say goodbye to privacy. You might as well set up a live stream with your roommates. Roommate reality show. Can't escape the boiling borscht edition. And speaking of that legendary borscht, imagine making dinner while your neighbors create a symphony of noises that could best be described as chaotic gastronomy. The walls are so thin they could practically do the wave whenever someone boils cabbage. Ever wondered what it's like to lay in bed, pondering how many spicy debates have slipped through your walls? Did he just say what I think he said about that loaf of bread? You can practically feel the neighbor's gossip curling around you like cigarette smoke. But let's get back to that tram. The vehicle arrives, a metal contraption decked out with the latest in Soviet design technology, if you interpret latest as not rusted out. You hop on, since you've already made it this far without major frostbite. Inside, you're greeted by a chorus of sighs, grumbles, and the occasional sneeze, which seems to be the national anthem of modern Soviet life. You find a handle to grip and hold on for dear life as the tram lurches forward, propelling you into a cloud of sneezes and complaints that echo like a group therapy session gone wrong. As you ride through Leningrad, you can almost taste the camaraderie. Or is that just the smell of fish and despair wafting in from the open windows? You settle in, listening to the ongoing arguments about whether potatoes or beets have more social value. Trust me, no one has the actual answer, but opinions abound like cheap vodka on a Friday night. By the time you reach your stop, you're overwhelmed by the sensation that humanity, even on the bleakest of days, can find humor in shared suffering. After all, what's life without a bit of laughter? Between the dripping overhead light fixtures and the vibrating floorboards, you've realized that you haven't just boarded a tram.
You've signed up for a masterclass on patience, negotiation, and, somehow, learning to laugh at increasingly absurd situations. So here you are, embracing the frosty adventure of 1953 in Leningrad, with every icy breath stirring your resolve, and a sprinkle of community spirit keeping you warm. After all, what's a little rain, a lot of snow, and a housing crisis compared to the remarkable art of shared existence? And if you somehow manage to lose your dignity along the way, well, at least you gained a few stories to tell over a dubious bowl of borscht.
Chapter 5. The Tram of Tight Spaces and Unrecognized Affection. Let's talk about public transportation. Imagine it's 1953. You're late for work, and you need to hop on a packed tram that's about to become a communal sauna, minus the luxurious essence of eucalyptus. You see, riding a Soviet tram isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's an intimate dance of discomfort, camaraderie, and questioning your life choices in the nearest corner of your mind. As you squeeze onto the tram, the air inside feels thicker than a bowl of oatmeal left out overnight, sticky, heavy, and mingling with the aroma of humanity that can only be described as a blend of cabbage, hope, and despair. Every grip on a metal pole is practically a lifeline, as fellow passengers seem to shift in a synchronized effort to maximize personal space while simultaneously invading yours. Who needs a relationship when you can achieve that level of closeness with 15 strangers, each clinging desperately to their briefcases, coat pockets, and the collective dream of getting to work relatively unharmed? Your cheek finds a cozy resting spot against someone's shoulder, a welcome contrast to the cold metal pole behind you. You take a moment to appreciate the soft, yet somewhat stale scent of wool. Is that a hint of week-old borscht in there? Ah, the nostalgia. Every overcrowded transit ride becomes an experience akin to a musical. Not a Broadway show, mind you, but more like an off Broadway production featuring a cast of soggy, resentful commuters. As the tram lurches forward, you're thrown into a delightful blend of faces, worn and world-weary, displaying expressions of determined indifference. Tired eyes flash as they come to terms with another day of labor in the factories, their hollowed sockets illuminated by the dim flicker of the overhead light, as if pleading for an escape route, preferably one not involving a drastic change in career like professional potato peeler or sous chef in a borscht factory. You spot an elderly woman pinched tightly against the window, knitting fervently, almost as if she's trying to create a woolen fortress against the outside world. Meanwhile, a young man stands with a novel tucked under his arm, purposefully avoiding eye contact with anyone. Is he trying to transcend to another reality, or simply oblivious to the fact that he's being squished against a bustling sea of humanity like a sardine? Either way, you support his quest for literary enlightenment,
albeit with a few questions about the practicality of reading in a moving metal sardine can. As the tram halts at the next stop with a violent jolt, you experience a brief moment of panic as passengers disembark, not for the sake of fresh air, but to allow room for more passengers to leap into the fray, much like starving wolves diving into a livestock pen. You didn't sign up for a physical fitness class, yet here you are, unwittingly getting your cardio in while trying not to elbow someone in the ribs. Priorities, right? Glancing around, you can practically hear the silent thoughts bouncing off the walls. Will the fish market still be open? Did I forget to turn off the stove? Can someone please invent a comfortable tram? One cannot help but ponder if perhaps a low-budget reality show could be made from capturing the intrigued expressions of tourists who accidentally boarded the tram while expecting a scenic tour. Look, dear, the locals are practicing survival tactics as the tram rocks and rattles along, showcasing a compelling tableau of daily life in the post-Stalin era. Each time the tram bumps along the tracks, the comforting vibrations weave a story of connection, strangers forging new bonds through unacknowledged proximity and forced smiles that almost convey a "we're all in this together" sentiment, even if it's with the faintest of sighs. Is that a collective you hear? Yes it is. But hey, at least they're in this together. As you arrive closer to your stop, you begin to wonder what kind of small victories await you outside the metal cocoon. Will today be the day where you finally score a warm pastry, or at least a potato worthy of your culinary dreams? Will you get the chance to prove that your borscht-making skills have improved, and maybe even surprise your neighbors with something besides the usual cabbage concoction? Ah, life in the Soviet Union, a test of endurance and creativity. But no matter how squeezed or how silently you scream on this tram, you embrace these moments, the packed buses, the tightly pressed bodies, and the bittersweet awkwardness, because when you're riding the waves together, it's always just a little less lonely. So here you are, woven into the very fabric of Leningrad life, armed with stories of shared discomfort and laughter. Who needs personal space when you can have 5 half-squished individuals and a general consensus on the superiority of potatoes over beets? Remember, at least you're all in this unromantic assembly of survival together. At the end of the day, it's just you, your fellow commuters, and an unshakable bond formed through pettiness, resilience, and the eternal quest for that next magic potato. Because really, what's a little discomfort among friends? Chapter 6. Steel Dreams and Factories Doubled as Homes. Let's talk about factories. Imagine you're in 1953, standing before the Kirov Works, a sprawling factory complex that appears to stretch into the horizon like a never-ending queue for the latest cabbage recipe. The air is thick with the scent of metal and ambition, and above you, great smokestacks puff out gray clouds like a mechanical dragon trying to quit smoking. Yes, you're now part of the grand Soviet effort towards industrial might, because nothing says personal achievement quite like making steel with the subtlety of a bear at a tea party. As you step through the gates, the resounding clang of metal on metal fills the air,
a symphony played exclusively by workers who left their love lives behind. Each whir and clank creates an ambient soundtrack. You know, the kind that would drive any hipster mad trying to recreate it with artisanal rubber bands and upcycled cans. You feel slightly inspired, maybe even heroic, like an action movie star who's just about to foil a dastardly plot, and then probably change a tire or something equally mundane. Now, let's set the scene further. The moment you enter, forget about privacy. The open floor plan is designed more for efficiency than comfort. It's like living with your nosy aunt who insists on knowing everything about your life. Oh, you thought your apartment was bad? Here, you practically sleep under your supervisor's desk, where the only decorations are an inspirational poster of Lenin and an assortment of half-empty coffee mugs that look like they might have housed the Last Supper's leftovers. You're now part of a giant machine, both literally and metaphorically. The workers around you, a colorful ensemble cast of steel-hardened individuals, generate heat, sweat, and an occasional curse word that floats through the air like errant sparks from the melting furnace. You can practically feel the camaraderie as they all take brief breaks for monotonously riveting conversations about who's had the worst lunch. Though, let's be real here. Everyone knows it's the guy who mistakenly opened a can of pickled herring instead of peas. Speaking of lunches, let's drift into the cafeteria, where culinary experiments happen daily. A beautiful cacophony of scents wafts through the air. Delicious? Oh, you must be joking. The offerings include something that gets affectionately dubbed as mystery meat, a dish that could either be the main course or a petri dish for the burgeoning science project of communism. Picking up your tray, you try to identify the strange gelatinous lump on your plate, while the person next to you gratefully swallows something resembling old boots. Bon appétit, comrade. Just like the industrial behemoth surrounding you, life during the post-Stalin era revolves around routine. But do you ever find yourself contemplating the meaning of existence while standing in line for a portion of gruel? You wonder whether sharing the same meal with at least 30 other people is really connection, or just a group experience of comparative despair. If sharing is caring, why does the taste of this slop feel more like a betrayal? As the factory whistles blow and shift changes begin, you step outside and see a sea of gray. Gray buildings, gray skies, and of course, a gray future. It's as if a giant artist decided to paint everything in monochrome, with a palette consisting solely of soot. Ever wondered what walking through a black and white film feels like? Well, congratulations. You just time-traveled to the peak of the bleakest period in Soviet history, where the excitement of industrial production was rivaled only by a trip to the dentist without anesthesia. Now picture this. After a long day in what sometimes resembles a medieval dungeon, rushed through a 20th century renovation, you finally head back to your compact apartment. Privacy? Think again. Your home is as confined as your desire for personal space during family gatherings. In the luxury of camaraderie that only a shared bathroom can provide, you will learn the fine art of waiting your turn, letting out a sigh of relief when you discover that management still hasn't canceled the hot water supply today. And there you sit, contemplating the day's events around collective dinner. What do you want to do with your life? You ponder over last night's soup. Become a backward-glancing history enthusiast with a peculiar obsession for the local potato? Here's the kicker. Right now, potatoes are practically the national treasure, and yet you still can't shake the uneasy feeling that there's a conspiracy surrounding their availability. Through it all, you find a strange solace. In a life dominated by industry and the relentless march of collective achievement, you discover humor as your mental escape. Who needs self-help books when each day could provide laughable anecdotes inspired by the haunted echoes of factory machinery? As you drift off to sleep, know you're part of something bigger, even if it's just a massive effort to turn paranoia and cabbage into steel dreams. And who knows, maybe tomorrow's adventures will involve something as riveting as a potato festival. In the heart of the Soviet machine, togetherness rules and hilarity ensues, despite the grouchy clouds and metal clanging. Because at the end of each day, when the sun sets and you lay your head down, you embrace the absurdity of it all. After all, there's nothing more comforting than knowing you're riding this tumultuous wave of history, not entirely unlike trying to catch a runaway train with a spoon. Chapter 7. A cheesy method of potato production. Let's talk about the magic of manufacturing in the glorious Soviet era. Less a factory and more a splendidly chaotic ballet of metal and human error. Imagine yourself, dear listener, transported to a buzzing factory floor in 1953, somewhere in the vast expanse of the Soviet Union, where the air smells distinctly of grease and existential dread. You've joined a group of hard-working comrades, each of you clad in coveralls like mismatched patchwork dolls, everyone in a race against time, productivity, and possibly a lunch break that may or may not involve some dubious jelly-like substance often referred to as food. In this metallic wonderland, you take your place beside a lathe, a hulking beast of a machine that resembles an angry, overgrown cheese grater. It's massive, greasy, and deeply intimidating, like a monster that just wants to carve you up into potato-shaped components for the latest iteration of Soviet-made tractors. You're not just shaping metal, you're capturing the spirit of the era, one perfectly machined piece at a time. Ever operated heavy machinery before? No? Well, buckle up. It's like herding cats if all the cats were made of iron and could crush your hand in a second. The lathe whirs into action, its sounds mingling with the ambient clatter of machinery as metal shavings cascade away like confetti from a party that no one really wanted to attend. Your hands glide over the controls, guided by muscle memory that's been cultivated through years of repetitive labor. Essentially, the Soviet equivalent of an unyielding video game that has turned into your second career. The pain in your fingers feels oddly satisfying as you manage to produce perfectly crafted parts that, let's be honest, will probably outlive your enthusiasm for early morning wake-up calls. As the lathe spins and churns, you can't help but notice the various odors that waft through the air, like a bizarre cocktail of burning oil and questionable body odor competing for dominance. Ever walked into a gym bag that hasn't seen the light of day in 2 months? Well, this is like that, but with added industrial grit. And speaking of competition, you can hear the playful banter between your fellow workers who have turned grueling machinery operations into an art form, sharing jokes that are sharper than the tools they wield. How many tractors does it take to change a light bulb? One jokester winks, his hands still oily enough to start a lube company. None. That's what the darkness is for. You chuckle, but soon your mind drifts. Isn't it funny how you've traded a quiet evening in front of the TV for the rhythmic hum of machinery? At least in the factory, you won't have to argue whether a 14th episode in a sitcom actually matters. Here, it's pure sweat and toil, a reality dictated by the clinking of tools and the sobering thought that your next paycheck may depend on how many of these steel contraptions you can spin out before the day ends. Each tractor component feels like a tiny life achievement that's frequently drowned out by the echoes of your supervisor's incessant reminders about quotas. Yes, that's right. Nothing screams motivation like someone hovering over you like an anxious hawk, waiting for a chance to swoop in. Time moves faster than a buyer's remorse after a questionable purchase, and before you know it, the factory whistle blows its clarion call. You pause, wiping the sweat from your brow with a makeshift rag that was once a map of the Soviet Union. With a sigh, you and your co-workers trickle out like a broken faucet, heading to the cafeteria, which is essentially a dystopian oasis promising an exotic array of food, if mystery meat and sloppy soup can be classified as such. But diving into this culinary maelstrom is an experience worthy of a semi-rebellious stand-up routine. You shuffle your way in, eyeing the selections as if they're rare artifacts in a museum. Oh, look, grilled potato-like substances. Is it a potato? Or did they just have a really good time with the vegetable peeler? But one must eat. And while you try to identify the chunks floating suspiciously around in a broth that could double as industrial lubricant, you can't shake the feeling that, in this land of plenty, plenty means shapes that were once food. Later, as you attempt to savor something vaguely resembling cheese, you mumble to your friend, "This could either be the best thing I've eaten this week, or a delightful experiment in culinary regret." And that's the spirit of the era, always scanning the horizon for a silver lining, even if it's couched in entirely absurd terms. With your stomach mildly confused and your heart somewhat lightened by the camaraderie shared over questionable lunches, you glance at your watch. Time slips through your fingers, and soon it's back to the lathe, back to creating parts that will ultimately serve the greater good, or simply become fascinating museum exhibits one day if they remember to add the historical context of how we made things in the bleakness of Soviet pragmatism. You pause and chuckle softly, knowing that sometimes laughter is the only grease you can find to fit into the gears of life. As the lathe starts to whirl again, you realize that for every shoddy food experience, for every oddly shaped metal part, there's camaraderie around the machinery that forms a different kind of sustenance, a little absurd, a little sweet, and perfectly quirky, just like life in the land of tractors and industrial dreams. So, dear listener, close your eyes and maybe imagine the metallic gleam of a tractor reflecting the glow of 1,000 potato fields. Remember the laughter, the banter, and the uncanny ability to find joy in the oddities of factory life, where each day is a long, winding journey through steel, laughter,
and a smeared coating of dreamy absurdity.
Chapter 8: The Not-So-Private Lives of Soviet Apartment Dwellers. Let's talk about your cozy new digs, specifically your charming Soviet apartment, an architectural marvel of efficiency and wildly inappropriate intimacy. You've finally settled in, but what you may not realize is just how little privacy these dwellings offer. As you stare at the peeling wallpaper and the rugged linoleum floor, as vibrant as last week's cabbage, let's embark on a journey through this peculiar world of communal living, shall we? Picture it. You wake up on a morning steeped in nostalgia for the Scrabble nights of your youth. Your favorite apron-clad neighbor, Yelena, is rehearsing her vocal stylings for the community signing contest. Her rendition of "Stalin Will Live Forever" is more enthusiastic than tuneful. If you weren't already awake, congratulations. You now have front-row tickets to a concert of questionable quality. It's less American Idol and more, "Please help, the neighbors are practicing again." As you sit up in bed, the sounds of community life shake the walls like an enthusiastic maraca party. Your new reality is gloriously bleak, painted in shades of gray and, oddly enough, a chartreuse that was likely not intentional. You peek out the window and catch a glimpse of your next-door neighbor, Boris, as he performs his morning exercises that include an impressive series of one-legged squats and questionable chin-ups on the rusty fire escape. It's like watching a walrus trying to do yoga, oddly mesmerizing but slightly horrifying. You take a moment to admire the view. If you squint, you can see a hint of the beautiful, bleak skyline of a city entrenched in propaganda. It's like they took all the optimism of a summer day and dunked it into a bucket of ink and sadness, rendering the entire landscape in a monochrome delight. Your apartment, however, is a symbolic fortress of state ideology, a flying banner reminding you that, yes, there's a chance to succeed, provided you're willing to give up every semblance of comfort for the greater good. Your new abode comes equipped with shared restrooms, which you rapidly learn are communal spaces featuring an eclectic blend of awkward small talk and the lingering scent of whatever's been microwaved into submission the night before. You can't help but feel that the building itself is a character, an inflexible creature built to house countless souls with undoubtedly diverse dreams, all packed into these walls like overripe potatoes. But let's talk amenities, or lack thereof. As you fumble with the faucet in the kitchen, you discover that it has a propensity to spew water like a raccoon caught in a rainstorm. You achieve success only 10% of the time, a bubbling fountain of disappointment with a side of anxiety about what may be crawling in the pipes, if anything lives in the moldy depths. Each drip landing in the sink sounds like a countdown to your next existential crisis. Is that a cockroach I see? Or is it just the apartment showing its affection for you in the most grotesque way possible? And then there's the kitchen, where you've been told you can prepare delicious meals with a delicate balance of potato, cabbage, and something they ambiguously refer to as meat. Perhaps the source of this meat was a former pet. Best not to think about it. Your culinary adventures could either lead you to a gourmet dish or to the terrifying realization that you'll need to call an exorcist to cleanse the ghost of a dinner that almost felled a family. Every apartment has its quirks, of course. There's a deep sense of camaraderie in shared misery. You hop from one apartment to another, where unsolicited advice flows like vodka on a raucous evening. You learn about strategies for low-budget meals, dive into impromptu karaoke nights, and engage in long discussions about how to make do with what you have, while secretly plotting how to disassemble your neighbor's prized collection of sugar packets. Everyone knows it's only polite to help each other with sugar, and yet no one could have reasonably anticipated the heights of depravity some would reach for a spoonful of sweetness. Outside your window, a worn propaganda bulletin board triumphantly displays the success of the latest 5-year plan. Bold slogans plastered in red and bright smiles on beaming workers, all of whom undoubtedly share a sense of collective joy about their never-ending sense of togetherness. Ever looked at a family photo that left you questioning your life choices? Imagine that on a massive billboard, and you've got the essence right there. It's almost as if they're saying, let's ignore the hardships and embrace our mutual dysfunction, shall we? Because what better way to build a perfect society than to eliminate solitary living? Stripped of all personal quirks, individuality is but a rare decorative fixture in these drab, overcrowded flats. As you slide back into your comforting cocoon of sheets, you realize that even the sense of shared experience carries with it a comfort, a bizarre assurance that when your neighbor yells out the news of yet another state-sponsored dinner, a delicious serving of watery gruel, you won't be alone. And perhaps that's the magic of living in this not-so-private USSR. The laughing, the shared woes, the karaoke competitions that could rival any talent show, all a part of modern Soviet life, lovingly bundled into one slightly cramped apartment for your amusement and occasional horror. So, as you nestle into your dreams enveloped in warmth and laughter, remember the camaraderie that life in your Soviet apartment has gifted you. Because in the end, nothing says it takes a village quite like the collective sigh of everyone who's just trying to take a shower without bumping elbows with a neighbor. Because nothing is private when you're all a life, part of one oddly entertaining, chaotic, and deliciously absurd tapestry of life. Chapter 9. The Cozy Chaos of Your Communalka Retreat. Hey guys, welcome to tonight's episode of Sleep-Inducing Absurdity. Grab your pillows and perhaps a cup of something warm, because we're stepping into a Soviet Communalka, a dazzling masterpiece of communal living that was equal parts charming and tragic. If your current living situation feels cramped, just wait until you experience a room only slightly bigger than an overcooked potato wedge. Tonight, we're diving deep into the life of a 150 square foot living space that, let's be honest, could probably double as a petri dish for mold and regrettable meal experiments. But first, let's settle in. Dim those lights. Put on a fan to create that lovely background noise which screams, "I don't know how to fix leaking pipes," and snuggle into your sheets. Are you ready to ponder some life-altering questions before we embark on this journey? Would you consider putting a coat on your bed for warmth, a fashion statement, or a cry for help? Have you ever shared a bathroom with 5 people and felt as if your dignity has gracefully exited the building? Ah, yes, and speaking of unpredictable plumbing, ever risked an impromptu water ballet while trying to navigate the kitchen sink? It's like being on a game show where all the prizes are actually just bad decisions. Congratulations! You just woke up in the year 1953, right after Stalin's departure from this world, and right before the decades of stagnation and collective existential crises. You stretch, only to find your elbow cozily brushing against a stack of coats that seems more suited for a Yeti convention than an average Soviet abode. The air is filled with the sweet scent of damp coats. Ah, yes, the delightful aroma of shared struggle. Let's talk about your sleeping arrangement. Your bed, if you can even call it that, is nothing more than a narrow strip of questionable foam, with a collection of Soviet-era coats piled high like fortifications against the onslaught of winter chill. It's less cozy nook and more adventure in body heat conservation. You'd think sleeping on a layer of coats would resemble a marshmallow fluff cloud, but in reality, it feels more like you're attempting to rest atop an IKEA display gone horribly wrong. And that small table in the corner? It's a real multifunction superstar. By day, it's a surface for hastily scribbled plans about your imminent escape to a life filled with personal space. By night, it transforms into a makeshift dining area for your delightful zero-flavor cabbage concoction. It's basically the Swiss Army knife of furniture, minus the actual usefulness, and plus the entertaining possibility of it collapsing under the weight of your dreams, or your lunch leftovers. As you shuffle to the communal kitchen, the floor beneath your feet groans in protest. Ah, yes, the well-loved linoleum, where each squishy step brings new heights of anxiety about what exactly is lurking
beneath. Rumor has it, the last occupant's lost potato still reigns supreme in the gravitational pull of despair and who knows what else. And what's the first thing you do? You rummage through your cabinet, filled with the treasured delicacies of the era. Spoiler alert, most of them are potatoes, and probably cabbage that's seen better days. You set to work, determined to create a culinary masterpiece. Will you triumph in the kitchen, or will the smoke alarm declare war on your efforts? Ah, yes, the thrill of possibility, tinged with the aroma of burning dreams. It's time to navigate to the bathroom, and let's acknowledge this rite of passage, the communal restroom. Consider it a spa experience, but with less luxury and more awkward eye contact. Each morning is like Hogwarts. The sorting hat evaluates your stress levels and assigns you to the stall that will certainly have the least welcoming presence. You're pulled into the complicated dance of privacy, where the thin walls offer more transparency than the state-run newspaper. Will this be the day you successfully complete your bathroom routine without feeling like a hostage in a poorly directed sitcom? Only time will tell, my friend. Back in your room, you enjoy, or rather endure, the lively chorus of neighbors. Your thin walls offer a front-row seat to the melodious sounds of life within these walls. You hear the cheerful shrieks of children wheeling about like musical notes on a particularly chaotic scale. Is it music, or just your neuroses harmonizing with the sounds of neighboring arguments? Ah, the joy of community. As you nestle deeper into your bed of coats, you appreciate the glorious absurdity of your situation. While you may find yourself in a tightly packed, closet-sized room, sizzling memories of communal meals, off-key renditions of state-approved songs, and a non-stop parade of neighbors' life dramas serves as your entertainment. It's a bittersweet symphony where every shared "woe is me" transforms into a warped kind of camaraderie. So, breathe in that quintessential Soviet air infused with humor and resilience, because in the end, it's about living in delightful absurdity. As you drift off to sleep, remember this journey, a tapestry of sounds, smells, and the ever-present realization that perhaps in our shared chaos, we find a thread of connection that binds us all, even in our quirkiest and most cramped conditions. Sleep well, dear friend. Tomorrow, we shall explore even more delightful absurdities of life in the Communalka. Chapter 10. The Communal Oasis of Bathing Sans Privacy. Hey guys, welcome to tonight's episode of Sleep-Inducing Absurdity. Please, dim those lights and let the comforting hum of daily life wash over you like a lukewarm cauldron of cabbage soup. Tonight, we're diving into a world that brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, attackers. Imagine having a communal bathroom that makes a middle school locker room feel like a luxury spa. Yes, my dear dreamers, tonight we'll explore the thrilling depths of Soviet bathing facilities, where privacy is as elusive as a decent pair of socks after laundry day. Now, close your eyes and imagine the splendid cacophony of scrubbing, splashing, and a certain amount of enthusiastic sighing we all can appreciate in those moments we just want to cleanse our souls and our slightly questionable armpits. Has your morning routine ever felt like a competitive sport? You know the kind,
Morning showers that involve a strategic maneuver to avoid mid-bathroom existential crises. Oh, and don't forget that nagging question. Is this bathwater really clean, or has it become a soup of communal regret? Congratulations! You have just awakened in 1953, where the air is thick with the scent of, well, let's just say you'd best not identify it precisely. You rise, bleary-eyed, drawn into a world that makes your apartment's ambiance look like a Holiday Inn. You shuffle to the bathroom, greeted by the lovably grim reality of a shared space where each tile screams memories of countless bathroom etiquette debates. Let's talk about bathing. It's less about exfoliating and more akin to a group therapy session where everyone nods knowingly while pretending not to notice how truly desperate you look as you navigate the cracked sink like it's a high-stakes obstacle course for the week's remaining soap. The shower attachment, you've come to understand, is a whimsical feature of your life. Imagine a garden hose with a sprinkle of melancholy and a dash of rust, spraying you in an uncanny rendition of a gentle summer rain. And as you stand there, it dawns on you. This cracked sink has seen more action than a Soviet wildlife documentary, and it shows no signs of retreat. You laugh softly to yourself, contemplating the horrified reactions of friends utilizing the latest bathroom decor fads in the modern era. You'd sell your vintage vinyl collection for a marble countertop, or at least a sink that announces, "Today I will not emit a noxious odor of questionable origins." What's a stayover without the eternal struggle to turn the chain-pull toilet into a functional contraption? Playing a game of Will It Flush every morning has become a cherished ritual. Why take a mental health day when you can stimulate your adrenaline instead? Oh yes, the thrill of wondering if your morning offerings to the porcelain god will magically vanish or create a revolution in your shared space. Who needs a theme park, you chuckle, when you've got a toilet with a mind of its own? Now the steam in the air is almost intoxicating, not for its spa-like ambience, but for the sense of shared humanity it envelops you in. Can you hear the murmur of your neighbors? They could form a band called the Symphonic Strains of the Soviet Bathhouse, a true hit, undoubtedly. We'll call an album Squashing Cucumbers and Other Absurdities, you think dryly, as the water gurgles around your feet. As you scrub your back, let's discuss the unfortunate aesthetics of communal soap. The one bar for all. If you really want a transformative experience, just think of it as a gigantic, mildly gritty exfoliating stone. It's like trying to wash your hands with a very generous hunk of petrified bread. Who needs anti-aging cream when sharing soap offers all the benefits of hospital-grade skin exfoliation? You glance around conspiratorially, noting a neighbor valiantly wrestling with the intricacies of the 3 people in 1 shower logistics. What equivalent in modern life could muster such comedic turmoil? Imagine the titanic clash of 3 people using a single showerhead, poised like dancers in a tragic ballet. Welcome to the grand performance of Who Will Draw the Short Straw, and just might end up with shampoo in the eyes. Every rinse-off session is a delicate tango of tangled limbs and awkward eye contact. Ah, the sheer thrill of crises that only the most daring souls venture through. Forget bodily privacy. Who needs that when you are one water splash away from hilarity? Let's not overlook the added tension. There's truly nothing more exhilarating than that arbitrary moment when the water goes cold, clocking your resolve at a brisk 30 seconds. Finally, as you step out, feet squishing into the spongy, questionable mat that probably saw better days before your grandmother was born, you can't help but feel a deep-rooted camaraderie with your fellow bathers. You've shared more than just space. You've had a mutual, unspoken commitment to the absurdity of life, a bond forged through steam, soap, and perhaps a dash of communal frustration. As you wrap yourself in a towel that might be better off as a dish rag, remember this odd moment in history. Living through a shared bathroom might not be a privilege you seek, but, dear friend, it's a comedy of errors you can now internalize through laughter. You may be weary, possibly slightly sticky, but at least you have the joy of knowing that sometimes shared challenges lead to endearing tales of survival. So sink into your dreams, where harsh realities won't interrupt your serene exploration of human absurdity. Tomorrow, we'll step further into the wonders of communal living, complete with more laughter and just a sprinkle of existential dread. Sweet dreams, dear friend. The night is young, and this quirky journey has only just begun. Chapter 11. The Bakery Line of Dreams and Black Bread. Hey guys, welcome back to tonight's episode of Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where the only thing more riveting than waiting in line is, well, also waiting in line. Buckle up, because tonight we're diving into the heart of Soviet life, specifically the spectacular nail-biting thrill of queuing up at a bakery. Now, dim those lights, cozy up, and let that sweet smell of fresh bread fill the air. Well, in your imagination at least. There's a reason we're here, after all, and it's for the simple joys of existence that look suspiciously like a game of musical chairs, but in slow motion and on dial-up internet speed. But first, let's invoke your thoughts. Have you ever stood in line so long you considered offering to pay rent for your spot? Or maybe you've pondered deep philosophical questions like, if I pass my neighbor in line, is it friendship or treachery? Not to mention, what are the toppings for disaster in the grand scheme of life? Sourdough envy? Yeast shortages? Sound ridiculous? Just wait until we unveil the wonder that is Soviet bread shopping in the years between Stalin's reign and Brezhnev's own spin of stagnation, where the only thing moving quickly was your fleeting hope of obtaining a loaf. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1953, the dawn of a new era positively bursting with bureaucracy and a dash of humor amidst the breadcrumbs. The sun is yet to peek over the horizon, but here you are, snuggled in layers, as you shuffle outside into the biting cold air to partake in the grand ritual that is queuing. Let's talk about breakfast, shall we? In this world, your stomach might as well be equipped with its own GPS locator because it's going to need it. As you step outside, reveling in your puffy coat, the chill is more biting than your cousin's wit at family gatherings. You find yourself surrounded by a motley crew of determined neighbors, armed with nothing but their resolve, and perhaps a shared lack of personal space. What's the plan, comrades, you might think? Shall we form an amateur choir while we wait for the bakery to open? This, my friend, is what we call a missed opportunity, because the combined sounds of frostbitten grumbling could be the next Broadway hit. Picture it. You are standing in a line where the only thing colder than the weather is the bread's potential availability. The silence is so profound, a mouse could sneak in a harmony while tiptoeing, and how quirky it is to think about mice and bread in the same breath. Every minute feels like an eternity as conversations about last week's cabbage stew dwindle into hushed whispers. Did you hear about Tatiana's new curtains? That's how social life works, one downright ordinary detail at a time, all while contemplating your existential relationship with edible flour. Outside the bakery, there's a low-key competition ongoing. Who can stand the longest without complaining about how uncomfortable it is? Spoiler alert, everybody fails miserably. But it's not just a test of endurance, it's practically an Olympic event. Out of nowhere, someone could pull off a legendary "I've been here since before 5 a.m. dive into a heartwarming yet comical rant about how delicious that loaf of black bread will taste once it finally lands in their waiting hands. Ah yes, black bread, the culinary marvel of the Soviet cuisine. If you've never experienced it, it's not quite like anything you'd find on a trendy artisanal menu today. It's dense, hearty, and has the unique allure of making your entire kitchen feel like a medieval fortress. The aroma wafts through the crowd intermittently, waking up old memories bigger than breakfast. The scent of something glorious, or perhaps just economic necessity. But as minutes turn into hours and anxiety simmers just below the surface, the line starts to feel like a collective human adventure worthy of epic bard songs. Have you noticed? The lady in front is debating whether her black bread purchases should come with a complimentary round of despair, or whether that should be extra. The man behind you is contemplating his life choices while adjusting a scarf that looks suspiciously like a throw pillow left over from the last family reunion. As the door swings open, revealing shelves sparkling with loaves that practically call out, "Take me home," you can almost hear the angels singing. Ah, but there's the rub. Just as fast as they are sold, you have to wrestle for those precious carbs. Suddenly, sitting down for brunch feels like a premium experience instead of a daily grind. When you finally clutch that glorious piece of black bread, smudged and full of character, it's as if you've defeated an ancient beast. Every bite feels like acquiring the Holy Grail covered in sprinkles of unsung artistry. As you walk away, arm in arm with your neighbors, who have now become your comrades in arms against rumbling stomachs, you can't help but laugh. The absurdity of waiting, of making small talk, of comically navigating the intricacies of bread-based philosophy wraps around you like a cozy blanket. So, my dear dreamer, as you drift into slumber tonight, Remember this saga of the bakery line that taught us resilience, community, and the fine art of waiting for something that sustains not just our bodies, but also our spirits. Laugh alongside the generations who forged indelible moments out of simple bread, knowing that the whole experience, much like life, will always have you yearning for one more slice. And in your dreams, enjoy the sweet aroma of black bread wafting through the air, reminding you that the everyday and the extraordinary often converge in deliciously unexpected ways. Chapter 12. The Samovar Saga, Scalding Water and Soviet Secrets. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where history is about as private as your neighbor's cat. And tonight, we're unraveling a tale more bizarre than trying to squeeze a 12-course meal out of a single potato. We're diving into the little-known reality of Soviet apartment life during the strange and mildly amusing post-Stalin era. So, get ready for a journey through the most communal of private spaces, your home sweet home, where even the joyous whistling of a samovar comes with a side of side-eye suspicion. But first, let's ponder a few absurd predicaments. Have you ever coveted your morning coffee from yesterday's cup, only to find a single stray hair telling you that's just gross? Or perhaps, in a fit of existential crisis, you've considered whether your toaster is judging your 3 a.m. snack choices. And let's not forget that lingering question: what on earth do you even do with a samovar if your apartment is so tiny you could take a shower while standing in your kitchen? Prepare yourself, because tonight we're spilling the steaming tea on Soviet life and its delightful quirks, strictly for your bedtime amusement. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1953, a time characterized by iron curtains, a lack of personal space, and an electric burner that may or may not be legal. But hey, who's keeping track? Ah, the exhilarating thrill of waking early in a cramped Soviet flat. Your home, like every other apartment in the neighborhood, is a bewitching experiment in communal living. Who needs privacy when you have the comforting knowledge that every neighbor knows your business, and, quite possibly, your brand of toothpaste? Now, let's talk about water. It's not just a simple H2O. It's your ticket to becoming a tea-making expert. Or, should we say, an undercover hydration strategist. You shuffle into the tiny kitchen, a place so small that if you turned around too quickly, you could unintentionally redecorate the living room with kitchenware. The samovar, your proud, aged heirloom, conquered from the depths of years past, proudly occupies a corner, as if it were waving a royal flag while offering illustrious promises of warmth and refreshment. It whispers secrets of tea gatherings past, but its true skill lies in creating enough steam to briefly wrap you in a scalding sauna atmosphere. You pull out a small electric burner that, quite frankly, looks like it was designed for survivalists in a post-apocalyptic sitcom. This little contraption is your mode of rebellion against the oppressive weight of communal heating, and, naturally, is more unauthorized than a raccoon rummaging through your garbage. Yet it serves its purpose, boiling those rebellious cups of water with the ferocity of a caffeinated hummingbird. As the liquid begins to bubble, the scent of whirling anticipation fills the air, much like that feeling you get when you simultaneously realize you're running late for work and forgot to wear matching shoes. The samovar, however, stands there, a stalwart witness to your desperate quest for a caffeinated miracle. With a gentle hiss, it seems to share in the joy of tea time, though you can't shake the feeling that it might know more about your morning rituals than you'd prefer. Time becomes fluid, like the steam rising from the burner. You reach for your favorite tea leaves, mixed with the lingering fear that during the boiling process, your samovar might just deliver an intense, ashy reminder of war-torn memories. You drop in the leaves, and for a moment, you're a Soviet culinary rebel, a tea sorcerer conjuring comfort in the most humble of abodes. But wait! Just as you pour boiling water into your cup, you hear a sound that causes you to freeze in place. Is that the creak of the floorboards due to casual Soviet surveillance? Or is it the neighbor's cat engaging in serious espionage, plotting to spy on you through the nearest window? You can't help but anxiously chuckle at the thought of that cat wearing a little spy hat, prowling around and taking meticulous notes on your breakfast choices. And while you sip that first burning yet delightful kiss of tea, you can't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with the countless families before you, huddled and sharing tales, sipping tea from chipped mugs, while the world outside raged with the absurdity of politics and bureaucracy. Each gulp carries echoes from history, inviting you to join the collective sigh of relief and laughter, blurring the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Just as you find warmth and comfort in your cup, an absurd detail shoots through your mind. Isn't it amusing how boiled water, as revolutionary as it feels, is basically just the world's oldest form of adulting? If only there were a college course on how to appropriately boil water without the fear of having your entire building condemn your social skills. So, my dear voyager of dreams, I leave you with the simple, comically warm lesson that even in a cramped Soviet apartment, life thrived with secret rituals surrounding tea, the reassuring hum of your little electric burner, and the absurdity of shared living spaces. Let the last remnants of your day drift away like steam from the samovar, knowing that history and all of its mildly interesting idiosyncrasies will wrap you in a cozy embrace as you slip into slumber. And remember, wherever you are, someone's probably boiling water at this very moment, too.
Chapter 13. Breakfast in a Brezhnevian Buzz. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where history serves you a breakfast that's both bland and remarkably sobering. Tonight, we're slipping into the breakfast scene of 1953 to 1983, the post-Stalin era, when your morning sustenance consisted of strong black tea and a bowl of kasha buckwheat porridge so sparse it could have used a motivational pep talk. Prepare yourselves for the kind of culinary experience that makes your modern-day brunch seem like an extravagant royal feast. But before we dive into our morning meal, let's think about the absurdities of breakfast in general. Ever felt like your slice of toast was secretly plotting against your sanity?
Maybe your coffee tries to stage subtle coups every Monday morning. Or your cereal raises existential questions every time it splashes back in the bowl. And be prepared for the millions of times you've had the joy of realizing that all the breakfast options in your fridge are expired, like opening a time capsule that smells like your last bad decision. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers on breakfast in a tiny Soviet apartment where privacy is as prominent as a unicorn at a dog park. Ready? Dim the lights, put on a fan if you need that breezy yet slightly cold ambiance, and let's tiptoe back into a time when kasha and tea were less about optimization and more about survival. Or maybe they were just trying to survive the absurdly mundane existence. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1953, and while you might expect the chaos of a modern kitchen, you're met with a battle station barely bigger than a broom closet. Ah, breakfast. You shamble out of bed, quietly grateful you survived another night in this lovely communal flat. Your body is still waking up, clawing back from a world of absurdity and bad dreams. Today, it's powered by a bowl of kasha and a fervent prayer for nutrition. Let's talk about breakfast. The air thickens with the aromatic promise of that strong black tea, a powerhouse blend fine-tuned by years of desperate bartering and occasional black market exchanges. This isn't just a beverage, it's your aromatic ticket to existence in an era where fulfillment is more of an abstract concept than anything edible. The kettle hisses as you brew, and if the sound doesn't wake you entirely, then the sheer perfumed blast of caffeinated joy surely will. Next to your steaming cup of hope lies the illustrious bowl of kasha. It looks innocent enough, silky, warm, resembling rustic grains as they await their fate. But let's be real. This dish is like the friend who always insists on going to that obscure indie film because it's so good. It might fill the void, but it leaves you questioning why you didn't choose pancakes instead. You're staring at one lonely spoonful of sugar, the kind of precious commodity that makes you feel like you're managing a high-stakes deal in the candy underworld. You stand there, porridge in hand, trying to inhale that missing sugar as if it might magically sprinkle itself over the kasha like a fairy godmother. Alas, the spoon remains empty for another day, and you once again resign yourself to simply enjoying the benefits of whole grains. Trust me, if a dietitian in your life were to taste this, their smile would be so forced it could cause a rift in space-time. Essentially, what does breakfast look like? It's not one of those Michelin-starred dining experiences. It's more akin to a fabled journey taken each day, with each bite being a challenge to chew through the intricacies of, how did I end up here? You lean against the tiny counter, thinking nostalgically about breakfast options in the modern world. Avocado toast, artisan bagels, breakfast tacos. But here, all you've got is the embodiment of difference, conflict, and a musty communal feeling that echoes around the flat like the ghosts of breakfast past. Eating your kasha while standing up is an art form, really.
you must quickly shove the lukewarm grains down your throat before your neighbor's extensive questioning session on your breakfast choices ensues. Still eating that sad porridge? They might croon, dripping with sarcasm, as if they were serving tea with a side of critique. Privacy in your own home? Not a chance. Your breakfast conversations are punctuated by neighborhood gossip and perhaps dissecting the latest interesting topic, the city's water supply, or the latest intrigues of the local cat community. We really need to understand the reasoning behind the cat drama. You finish that bowl quickly. The kasha has made its noble sacrifice in the name of sustenance. The final taste lingers like a reluctant goodbye, and even as you digest the resilient grains, the absurdity of life hangs in the air like that one room that always smells like cabbage, no matter how often it's cleaned. So, with a belly of comfort and a mind racing with the day's strange potential, you trot off to face whatever historical shenanigans await. After all, even when breakfast feels like a scene out of a peculiar sitcom, it times your entire day, setting the tone for absurdity at every turn. Let's just say that nobody does communal living quite like the Soviets, where breakfast wasn't just a meal, it was a deliciously awkward reminder that you weren't alone in the absurd dance of life. And with that inexplicable camaraderie fostered by shared meals and an exceptional inability to maneuver your kitchen without bumping into a neighbor, we shall move forward into deeper depths of Soviet life. After all, if you can survive breakfast in a Brezhnevian buzz, you can face anything. But maybe pack a snack, just to be safe.
Chapter 14. An Orange on the Counter. Hey folks, welcome back to Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where we take whimsical strolls through history that are soothing enough to make even the most restless sleeper nod off, sort of like giving your chaotic mind a warm cup of tea before it hits the hay. Tonight, we're diving into a world where fresh produce might as well come with a disclaimer. Warning, extremely rare, handle with care. Yes, we're talking about the Soviet Union between 1953 and 1983. You might want to keep that fan on. Things are about to get tropical. Well, if tropical can be described as an unlikely burst of color amid a palette of grays, browns, and maybe a hint of rust. But first, have you ever pondered the absurdity of trying to make dinner with only 5 ingredients while covertly dodging your neighbor's unsolicited culinary critiques? Or how about when a visit to the grocery store feels more like participating in a scavenger hunt for an orange than a normal shopping trip? How does one balance scarce resources, nosy neighbors, and a deep-rooted desire to make a meal that doesn't resemble a sad science experiment? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in a tiny Soviet apartment during the era where the word privacy is about as common as finding a unicorn in your backyard. At 7 a.m., you stumble out of bed, squinting at the unyielding gray light filtering through grimy windows, and breakfast is nowhere in sight. What you do notice, however, is a vibrant orange sitting majestically on the counter, looking like it's just emerged from a tropical vacation that nobody in your entire building could afford. This orange is a certified spectacle, the kind of fruit that would raise eyebrows
even in a tropical paradise. You can almost hear angels singing whenever someone lifts it from the counter, which honestly happens far too rarely. After what feels like an eternity of waiting in the state food shop gastronome, think of it as the DMV, but with fewer smiles and even worse snacks. You received this citrus treasure. The shop is an experience in itself. After navigating through a labyrinth of discontented, expressionless faces, you finally lay your hands on the orange on a day that feels like a personal victory. It's the equivalent of winning the lottery, but with a flavor that can only be whispered about among the hopefuls in line. Expecting a standing ovation for your great find, your evening dinner becomes a dramatic discussion piece. Ladies and gentlemen, you solemnly declare, behold the orange. And just like that, the ambience changes. Imagination entwines, fog rolls in, and suddenly everyone starts to plot ways to steal your newfound piece of joy. Let's take a moment to appreciate this orange from every angle. It gleams as if it knows that it is the VIP of your kitchen. Its scent wafts lightly, teasing your memory with a hint of summer, a memory you've only experienced in dreams
and infrequent black market purchases. But alas, this glittering citrus beacon sits atop a counter, clearly aware that you have no idea how to display its splendor in a culinary masterpiece. Some neighbors might stare at your orange with a sense of yearning, dreamy eyes swollen with jealousy. You're just going to have it sitting there, they may ask, with the disdainful conviction of a contestant who lost a bake-off. You can almost hear them whispering, "What's the plan here, maestro?" Ah, yes, the simplest task of turning this gastronomic glory into an actual meal feels like it requires a diploma in architectural engineering. You could juice it for a refreshing beverage, or maybe segment it and serve it as a brash appetizer at dinner. But with what? The practicalities of Soviet kitchen cooking often render those plans futile. You know full well a meal with only kasha and a single orange wouldn't go down in history as a culinary triumph. Your neighbors would still recall that time you attempted an exotic dish and left everyone feeling utterly bewildered. So, picturing the bustling apartment life surrounding you, a cacophony of clanging pots, children jockeying for prime sunbeam positions, and cats who believe they own the space entirely. Every little creak from the creaky floorboards serves as a reminder that privacy is a corporate myth, especially when that orange shines as brightly as a beacon of hope amidst a rationed life. You begin playing out 1,000 potential future scenarios that involve sharing or haggling over that single orange like it's a prized jewel. When you finally decide to peel it, the delicate scent escapes like the uncontainable giggles of children on a sugar rush. For a fleeting moment, you forget about your neighbor's insatiable curiosity. You marvel at how something that smells like sunshine can coexist alongside the lingering stench of boiled cabbage from last week's meal. In one slice, you take a piece of history. Before you know it, you're transported far away from the oppressive grayness of your apartment, sailing off to sun-soaked beaches where oranges grow on trees rather than crammed onto grimy counters. But by the time you savor that first juicy wedge, the illusion begins to fade. Sure, it tasted as good as imagining summer would be. However,
That blissful moment ends abruptly when your neighbor bursts in, clutching a battered pot and needing guidance on how to cook potato soup while commenting on what a fabulous idea it is to have an orange in the first place. Not for their lack of desire, of course, but because no one can possibly manage to enjoy a piece of fruit on its own in this communal ecosystem. In conclusion, you slice through the absurdity like you slice the orange, and in every bite you find a reminder of the whimsical chaos of living within brick walls, thick with stories waiting to be told. Even in the drabness of Soviet life, an orange had the power to turn any day into an elaborate vignette of shared snacks and enough laughter to drown out the seriousness of the absurd reality you inhabit. With that, you march forward, armed with kasha, tea, and your zesty little friend on the countertop. Because if your life is going to be a comedy, it might as well have a side of zesty punch, Chapter 15. The Underground Palace. Hey folks, welcome back to Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where our goal is to tickle your fancy while easing you into a gentle slumber, sort of like a feather pillow getting its first spa day. Tonight, we're diving deep into a world not of dreams, but of a somewhat dreamy underground realm, specifically the Moscow metro stations of post-Stalin-era Russia. Forget gold-plated ceilings and crystal chandeliers. We're talking about stations so grand that you'd think you stumbled into an underground palace, minus the option to order room service. But before we embark on this subterranean journey, let's ponder a few absurd questions. Have you ever stared into a packed subway car and thought, "This is exactly what I need"? The scent of too many covers in a space the size of a shoebox. Or perhaps you've considered how many secret identities could be hiding behind that elderly lady clutching her purse like a prized toast from a mediocre sandwich shop. Plus, if you had to choose between crowded public transportation and a paying job, which would you find the more challenging? Spoiler alert, they're about equally soul-crushing. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1953 Moscow, post-Stalin, where the icy tendrils of winter are only outdone by the rigid social whips of conformity. Step outside of your modest apartment, and you find yourself face to face with the splendor of architecture that seems to whisper, "Do not worry, comrades. Beauty is just a few hundred feet beneath your feet." Yes, you now have the pleasure of experiencing the Moscow Metro, an underground labyrinth filled with brilliant mosaics, ornate chandeliers, and enough marble to convince you that you've accidentally joined a marble appreciation society. As you glide down the marble stairs, you hear the rhythmic clanging of the trains, like a majestic orchestra auditioning for the role of most reliable public transport. The moody lights shimmer off the polished floors, casting dramatic shadows that have likely witnessed more gossip than a local cafe. Commuters stand locked in an intense battle of silence, each grappling with their own inner turmoil, while managing the fine art of not making eye contact. Seriously, you'd think they were engaged in a staring contest with invisible sources. You take a moment to observe the sheer absurdity of it all. Ever wonder why people can jam into a metro like sardines, but refuse to share an elevator ride if someone smells suspiciously like cabbage? Ah, the wonders of social dynamics in a rapidly changing world. While the elderly man next to you shifts awkwardly, concerned that he might be accidentally touching your sleeve, your mind wanders off to imagine the situations that could arise if this underground palace were actually a department store. Enormous sales on oxygen. Where else can you breathe deeply while running late? Before the monotony can settle too deeply, the lights flicker, and you're whisked away by the train. It carries you through a tapestry of history, each stop imbued with the lingering whispers of past glories and present woes. Rumor has it, if you listened closely while riding the metro, you could hear the echoes of Soviet posters advising passengers to be cheerful, even as they crammed against one another like prized herring in a can. The sound of the train is almost hypnotic, a murmur that drowns out the faint squeaks of metal and tired sighs from all around. You could use this moment to catch up on life's most pressing issues, like how you accidentally wore mismatched socks, or whether it may have actually been worth it to bring 3 bags of groceries on the metro instead of just 1. Spoiler, it's never worth it. Let's take a moment for the scene to settle, shall we? Close your eyes and visualize yourself surveying the art that adorns these platforms. There are enormous mosaics depicting proud workers triumphantly hauling in a bumper crop of turnips from the bountiful harvest. You can practically smell the faint scent of victory mingling strangely with whatever dish those commuters enjoyed for lunch. And you begin to wonder if maybe this is how the world ends, trapped in a whirlwind of turnips and bulk-purchased cabbage. And yet, amid the surrealism of colossal chandeliers and towering statues of stern-faced Marxism, you can't help but find humor in the sheer weight of it all. The trains, gliding smoothly along the tracks, feel like they're operating in a parallel universe where the rest of the world has stayed up on its surface, arguing about the latest pop culture phenomenon, while you merrily disappear into the ether, your identity sealed tight amid anonymous strangers. But life isn't all kaleidoscopic mosaics and chandeliered dreams. Oh no, there are practical matters to consider, like your ticket. Without it, you may be living the rest of your life in the underground dampness. With each stop, you consider how many individuals must have unsuccessfully attempted to smuggle forbidden snacks past vigilant ticket takers. The true art lies in how discreetly one can open a packet of sunflower seeds while standing inches away from a suspiciously observant babushka. Let me tell you, it's a reference-worthy performance that would earn you a standing ovation, and onlookers an added level of anxiety. As the train approaches your stop, you realize that you've left that extravagant world behind. Just as you step off, you can't shake the sensation that you've been soaring through a dream filled with glittering jewels and echoing laughter, only to be dropped back into the daily grind. That's the beauty and irony of the Soviet experience. Grandeur amplified by the mundane chaos of daily living, all wrapped into one rather large, surrealistic burrito. So as you step back out into the world above, take a deep breath of that brisk Moscow air. The memories of the underground palace cling to you like the somewhat dubious aroma of boiled potatoes wafting from those tiny apartment kitchens peppered throughout the city. And ahead of you lies another day,
filled with the laughter of human connection, the chatter of aspiring poets in lousy cafes, and enough quirks to keep you entertained, if only as a reminder that no matter how absurd life gets, a little humor goes a long way.
Chapter 16, The Not-So-Private Screening. Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where we find humor hidden in the shadows of history, much like your cat does at 3 a.m. when they decide it's time to have a party. Tonight, we dive into a place where privacy was as rare as an honest politician. Oh yes, I'm talking about the Khrushchevka, where every love story had a third wheel named your neighbor. But before we take the plunge, let's ponder a few questions. Have you ever had an annoying neighbor who seemed to know your entire life story? You know, the one who took too much interest in your trash on Wednesdays? What if that neighbor was your entire building? Ever found yourself longing for a kitchen so small that it doubled as your personal meditation space? Spoiler alert, it would be less Zen-like and more don't accidentally knock over the borscht. So, grab a cozy blanket, dim the lights, and maybe take a moment to put some floppy-eared muffs on your cat, because we're about to embark on a journey back to the not-so-aloof Khrushchevkas of post-Stalin Moscow. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1953, where your idea of a private retreat is about as plausible as finding a unicorn in Red Square. Let's talk about kitchens, shall we? As you step into your new Khrushchevka, if you close your eyes and squint decoratively, you might glean the sight of something vaguely resembling a culinary paradise. Well, at least compared to communal kitchens that resembled an elaborate game of human Tetris. Sure, it's tiny, maybe water-stained, and nestled awkwardly in a corner like an introverted cousin at a family reunion. But it has its own little stove and sink. Luxury! Imagine the first time you turned on that single-burner stove. The aroma of boiling cabbage wafts through the air, competing fiercely with the scent of gently aging wallpaper, like an awkward food feud. Your very own culinary fortress, at last. No longer must you brave the frigid trek down the hall, dodging intergenerational glares and the occasional flying pot. Picture it. Communal kitchens where each chef was a culinary artist armed with burnt fingers and questionable ingredients. Ah, the joys of community living, where potato peelings might float by and conversations turned into a bag of secrets. But let's not dwell solely on soggy vegetables. You might find yourself battling awkward encounters in your dreamy little kitchen. Will you be the brave soul who mistakenly leaves a yogurt container in the fridge for 7 years? Spoiler alert, you might as well be nurturing a pet rock named Igor at that point. The real drama lies in the competition between privacy and proximity. Your windows overlook other windows, like a poorly designed social experiment, where every glance into your neighbor's apartment feels like sharing a bowl of soup. The shared hallways echo your midnight snack escapades, complete with the sound of crinkling chips.
It's a strange sensation, living in a space that feels like a reality show where everyone is tuning in to catch a glimpse of your nightly rituals. Ever consider that maybe the most sacred of human experiences just became the neighborhood gossip topic of the week? As you whisk through the hallways, dodging curious eyes and expert observers, let's also talk about those real luxuries. The elevator,
or the absence thereof. Picture yourself trudging up 5 flights of stairs, contemplating life decisions as you ascend what feels like a convoluted cardio class, only to be met with the enthusiastic smile of a babushka carrying home a loaf of bread larger than your grocery budget. Do you even dare ask her how her day was? Or are we keeping that awkward silence alive? One cannot ignore the shared bathroom situation either. Communal bathing. Feels intimate, right? Imagine having your skin washed in the warmth of shared experience and barely absorbed resentment. You find yourself in a room where the walls aren't just thin, they practically have ears. Conducting your own personal bathroom concert suddenly doesn't seem quite as appealing when everyone in the building is sending you silent judgments through the textured walls. Ever tried to sing in the shower and ended up sounding like a dying potato? And then there's the magical moment when a stranger becomes your neighbor. Yes, folks, welcome to Khrushchevka, where love stories bloom between the sound of children running through hallways and breakup songs playing at moderate decibels. You end up developing an intense bond over the shared joys and mishaps, like the great "Who cleaned the toilet first?" debate, which, spoiler alert, concludes with everyone claiming it wasn't them, ever. Let's be real, it's all part of a chaotic and often comical social experiment. You navigate a world where your personal bubble bursts like a daydream upon encountering your upstairs neighbor while wearing not much more than pajamas. The prospect of living in such close quarters means you might overhear everything from late-night brawls over trivia night disputes to oddly specific romantic interests. So yes, you traded silence for bonds that could rival the strongest of fortified wines. In this peculiar living space, you haven't just moved into an apartment. You've entered a realm where eavesdropping isn't just allowed, it's an art form. Picture yourself wondering if you'll ever find that level of connection over the boiling water for tea whilst your neighbor downstairs grapples with a runaway cat. So yeah, welcome to the Khrushchevka, where the walls have ears, your kitchen demands your attention, and privacy is merely an ideal that some folks mark off on a to-do list, never to be accomplished. It's not just your home, it's a bloomin' social theater. And honestly, you wouldn't have it any other way. Chapter 17. The Desk of Endless Dread. Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where we explore the bizarre intersections of history and humor. Much like that time you desperately tried to find the bottom of your laundry pile and accidentally unearthed your 6th grade report card. Tonight, we are plunging into a world where your apartment was about as private as a fishbowl on a parade float. Yes, I'm talking about post-Stalin Soviet bureaucracies. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever sat at your desk and pondered whether your life was just one big administrative error? Or perhaps you found yourself wondering how many cups of coffee it takes to survive a Monday morning in a factory filled with paperwork that seems to multiply faster than rabbits. Spoiler alert, it's probably a lot. Maybe you've worried about eavesdropping coworkers who think your business is their business too. Wait until you hear about the efficiency of the Soviet Union's surveillance efforts. It makes reality TV look like a private therapy session. So, grab a cozy blanket, dim the lights, and perhaps slip on your important socks. Yes, the ones that spark joy. Because we're about to travel back to 1953, right into the soul of Soviet bureaucracy, where a supervisor's glass-walled cubicle was every bit as enthralling as watching paint dry, only more crowded and intimidating. Imagine waking up in the city of Moscow, where the air smells faintly of coal, nostalgia, and the lingering hopes of aspiring poets. You step outside into a world that feels just slightly off-kilter, as if someone misplaced your daily dose of individuality. Welcome to a factory floor that churns out more paperwork than actual products, a place where stacks of documents tower over you like modern art sculptures created by someone who dropped all the clay. Now, let's dive into the delightful chaos of a supervisor's day in this vibrant setting. As you settle into your glass-walled cubicle, the cool air hums like an over-caffeinated bee, and your desk is buried under a mountain of paperwork that would put a debt collector's filing system to shame. The papers are sticky with bureaucratic red tape and draped with the hopeful sign that reads, "All forms must be completed in triplicate." If you thought your last dentist appointment required a lot of forms, wait until you try scheduling something in this world. Every morning, it's a race against the clock. You glance at the Coca-Cola calendar that hangs precariously on the wall, where each day drips with the existential weight of 1,000 unfulfilled dreams. You think about the last time you had proper privacy, or rather, how it was a fleeting moment between bathroom breaks. The floor is alive with conversations, but not the cute kind. It's the kind where every whisper could mean either the birth of an innovative idea or the demise of your lunch plans. Your handy telephone buzzes with excitement, which, involuntarily, makes you jump, almost spilling your lukewarm tea, a concoction that would make the most adventurous of baristas shiver. Answering it promptly is essential, as you wonder if it's another protocol review, or perhaps a simple reminder that the world outside continues spinning without you. Your fingers hesitate above the receiver, like a social, awkwardness-fueled game of charades. Is there a right way to pick up a phone in a world dominated by requests, reports, and urgent situations that could really wait until Tuesday? Let's address the elephant, nay, the entire herd in the room. That photo of your family nestled amongst the paperwork. Ah, yes, the smiling faces of those who love you, despite your propensity for pretending deadlines don't apply to you. That photo is not only a gentle reminder that there's life outside this glass prison, but a motivational poster for why survival under fluorescent lighting is worth it. How did human relationships become so intricately intertwined with 4 layers of bureaucratic red tape, like a really sad version of a modern rom-com? As you gaze through the glass walls, intermingling with workers frantically typing out reports, while simultaneously discussing last night's television drama, which you haven't seen because you were wrestling with forms, you can't help but chuckle at the absurdity. It's like being in a reality show with a live studio audience, only everyone is your neighbor, and snooping feels less like a hobby and more like community engagement. Perhaps those neighbors are just waiting to hear about your latest coffee mishap, or the time you attempted to make a bold political statement by using slightly misspelled stickers on your bulletin board. The hustle is palpable, and the atmosphere crackles with enough tension to power an entire village.
You tread the line between helpful supervisor and definitely trying not to eavesdrop, with skill worthy of a tightrope walker. The daily challenges you face could easily fill a sitcom, a misplaced report that sparks a saga worthy of war and peace, a discussion about whether cupcakes should be classified as lunch or dessert. You'll say both. People need options. And the truly earth-shattering debate on whether potted plants deliver positive vibes or just collect dust. And through it all, remember, you are not just living in a glass-walled cubicle. You are a brave soul navigating the tempest of an oppressive yet oddly amusing environment. Here, paperwork becomes a form of resistance. Camaraderie develops over cups of tepid tea, and rumors float around like a lost kite in a windstorm. So, enjoy the little moments, the fumbling attempts to explain a missing signature, the glances exchanged during awkward elevator rides, and the gentle sighs shared over the weight of annual performance reviews. Who knows? Maybe, amidst the daily grind, you'll stumble upon a story that makes even the dreariest accounting report feel like a page out of a truly epic saga. In this post-Stalin world of glass walls and endless forms, there's a unique absurdity, a beautiful twist of human perseverance. You learn to navigate bureaucracy, to laugh at life through its charming absurdities, and yes, even find moments of warmth amidst those eternally cold Eastern Bloc bureaucratic realities. So sit back, relish in the camaraderie of your office mates, and remember, if there's one thing this era teaches, it's that a little humor goes just as far as good paperwork. More or less. Chapter 18. The Supervisor's Circus. Hey guys, welcome back to Sleep-Inducing Absurdity, where we plunge into history like it's a pool full of questionable jelly. Tonight, we're diving into the post-Stalin Soviet landscape, where the bureaucratic shuffle was less of a tango and more of an awkward dance between someone who's just discovered a bee in their ear and the enthusiastic neighbor who really wants to borrow your lawnmower. Picture this. It's 1953, and the industrial heart of the Soviet Union is racing toward a production target that's increasing faster than you can say unofficially mandated quotas, with the materials to match. Oh, did we mention? Not exactly guaranteed. Can you even imagine going to your job and being told to create magic with a sprinkle of pixie dust and whatever you can find under the couch? Spoiler alert, it's much less exciting than it sounds. So, take a deep breath, hit that cozy button on your imaginary comfort level, and settle in. We're about to drop you into a meeting room filled with factory supervisors gathered around a table that might as well be the administrative version of a high-stakes poker game. Only instead of chips, they're clutching papers, and the stakes involve either innovating the product line or ending up with a headline-worthy shade of pink that's only been seen in expired yogurt. Allow me to set the stage. You're nestled in the corner of a brightly lit conference room, complete with shabby furniture that seems more historical artifact than functional. A place frozen in time, with the smell of burnt coffee fighting for dominance
against the dust of 1,000 unfulfilled expectations. The clock ticks in the background, each tick marked by the unyielding specter of deadlines, and you can practically hear the dread echoing off the walls. As the supervisor to your left suggests yet another plan to boost productivity, whatever creative solution means, which, mind you, at this point, might involve constructing a production line out of cardboard boxes and sheer optimism, a subtle tension hangs in the air. Have you ever felt the pressure to innovate with absolutely zero resources? It's like trying to build a spaceship out of spaghetti when all you really have is a single piece of soggy lasagna. One manager, perhaps with a twinkle of desperation in their eyes and a shrug that could really use a good stretch, declares with zest, "Well, folks, it appears our production target has increased by 12%, but fear not, we shall unleash our inner magicians." This approach has less chance of success than your last attempt to hit that high note in karaoke while simultaneously clinging to a love relationship with a particularly unruly rubber chicken. With newfound determination, or maybe just a dash of madness that encroaches like a cat eyeing a patch of sunlight, the supervisors begin tossing out ideas. What if we get the workers to work faster by telling them they're racing to provide for a more bountiful future, like a fairy tale of industrial prosperity, says one, waving their hands excitedly as though they can conjure energy through sheer enthusiasm. The others sit back, slowly nodding, contemplating whether this is the point in the story where they all really should have invested in wolf costumes. Someone leans in with a proposal that involves turning lunch breaks into pep rallies, arguing that it's the perfect chance to adjust morale and potentially the production line, as if Southern-style barbecue and a riotous cheer routine could somehow translate into more equipment being assembled in record time. Think about it. A simple chant could synchronize the hearts of our team, they declare, eyes bright, as if they've just discovered the secret to the universe under their desk. Every time a new idea emerges, you can almost hear the groans of the worker bees who have the fun job of turning these lofty abstractions into reality, much like trying to bake a soufflé with only a microwave and half a carton of expired eggs. It's almost comical, imagining them rolling their eyes as the proposal to build a pneumatic tube system to deliver coffee to every worker's station gets thrown into the mix. Sure, that sounds efficient, but do you have any coffee? Don't bother checking the supply closet. It's in there with the lost dreams and that one stapler that grew to legendary status among the office staff. And amid the folly, a delightful absurdity emerges. Everyone in the room eagerly takes notes on a plan that resembles a treasure map more than an actual production schedule. A plan full of possibilities that may very well lead to a wild goose chase, or at least a goose that they reportedly could steal from the cafeteria's finest. At best, we'll find an awe-inspiring number of apples in our data, or, at the very least, a healthy dose of confusion, someone adds with a sly grin. But the real kicker? At the end of the day, you're all still figures in an economic game that feels delightfully peculiar. You wonder why nobody seems fazed by the increasing challenges. Perhaps it's the camaraderie of having to climb the mountain of paperwork so intricately that it feels like one of those inflatable obstacle courses that should have been made illegal at childhood festivals, but instead just symbolizes the playful absurdity of the era. So there you are, marooned in a labyrinth of laughter and paperwork that feels strangely familiar to modern-day office life.
where each day might yield a sparkling sense of optimism, followed directly by the cold realization that you're still hopelessly behind and standing in the wrong line for coffee. Relish these moments, my dear listener. They illustrate a time where humor and resilience coexisted against the backdrop of towering expectations. After all, bureaucracy might be a dense fog, but within it, humans still like to gather
around and spin wildly creative tales. Who knew that a glass-walled cubicle could foster such imaginative chaos and camaraderie? It's simply deliciously ironic. Chapter 19. Petro and the Overheated Anticipation. Welcome back, dear listeners, to the realm where absurdity meets those slightly more mundane historical tales that will leave you chuckling until you drift off. Tonight we find ourselves in the Soviet Union, the land of bears, balalaikas, and productivity reports that would make even the most ambitious squirrel dizzy with excitement. So settle in, dim the lights, and maybe grab a pillow in case you find yourself swooning over the relentless journey of one Petro, a maintenance worker whose skills might just rival that of any magician conjuring rabbits from hats. As we immerse ourselves in the realm of 1960s industrial magic, let's take a moment to ponder. Have you ever experienced the joy of a malfunctioning office printer that somehow decided to make your life an eternal game of tag? Ever spent an afternoon trying to consult a faulty coffee machine that possessed the personality of a disgruntled cat? What are the chances that your bathroom faucet leaks in an impressive spray during the critical moment of your shower? Well, welcome to Petro's world, where a suspiciously ancient machine is about to put all modern mishaps to shame. Picture the scene. You've just woken up in 1965 in a bustling Soviet factory, the sort of place where the air smells faintly of metal and despair, and the assembly line is more of a roller coaster ride than a path to productivity. Machines wheeze and clank, strained under the pressure of quotas that demand finesse, akin to painting the Sistine Chapel with a thumb. But lo and behold, one machine stands out, a hulking behemoth on the assembly line that's clearly seen better days. It's the industrial equivalent of your uncle's old sedan that splutters every time you take it over 30 miles per hour. This beast, fondly known as Grandpa Boris, has been sweating more than a penguin at a desert picnic. Yes, indeed, it's not just eagerly working, it's overheating like your last attempt to cook a soufflé. Metal grinds against metal with the vigor of a dance party gone wrong, and sparks fly more frequently than heated debates at family gatherings. As you unceremoniously slip into Petro's work boots, and honestly, they might just be the most comically oversized footwear you've ever seen, you can see the anxiety etched across the faces of your colleagues. Imagine trying to fix an oven while it's still cooking, but also rapidly deciding that embracing the role of a pyromaniac wouldn't be the worst thing if it means securing your daily ration of borscht. That's where Petro comes in, your crafty maintenance savior, who has a penchant for turning tragedy into triumph, and occasionally lunch into chaos. "Gather round, comrades," Petro bellows, his voice ringing with a mix of enthusiasm and fear. The enthusiasm of a motivational speaker, and the fear of a man who's just been handed a box of fireworks without instructions. Today, we
revive our beloved Grandpa Boris with some real Soviet ingenuity
and perhaps a touch of duct tape. You can almost hear the collective gasps from your coworkers. This is the moment they've been waiting for. Can our hero really mend the ancient gears with contraband supplies hidden away in the recesses of the supply closet? The tension is thicker than a bowl of oatmeal you forgot to stir, clinging to the air like the unshakable notion that you'll never escape that one awkward conversation at last year's party. With a spirit that mirrors the unyielding determination of a squirrel trying to crack open a walnut 3 times its size, Petro rummages through his supplies. He produces a colorful array of odds and ends, old wires, a spare rubber ducky, don't ask, and, of course, the pièce de résistance, a roll of duct tape that has somehow wandered into his grasp. Ah, yes, the true hero of every perplexing situation, equally adept for both repairs and, dare we say, wrapping gifts for the boss. As you watch him concoct a plan that is equal parts horrifying and brilliant, you can't help but think this whole scene rivals the culinary genius of your last attempt to recreate a Pinterest dinner disaster. So a little twist here, a spark there, and we'll have this machine humming like a nightingale, or at least a drunken cat. The camaraderie in the room is palpable. Colleagues congregate like moths to a flickering light bulb, their eyes wide with hope, and the recognition that things might explode or spectacularly succeed, and either way, they're unlikely to survive without a good story to tell. "Here we go," Petro mutters, squinting at the machine, as if it's about to reveal the inmost secrets of the universe, or, at the very least, whether he'll have to dodge a shower of sparks in a few moments. You lean in, breaths held, as he carefully applies the duct tape over a critical joint, a move that equals throwing salt into a pot of boiling water, a risky play that could end dramatically, or pretty much the same as it started, just with more chaos. At last, with one final flourish and the commitment of a knight in armor, Petro flips the switch. The machine grumbles, groans, and just when everyone holds their breath, like they're seconds away from an explosive sports finale, it lets out a triumphant screech that could only be described as music. The kind of music that comes from a mismatched band where the drummer has misplaced their rhythm. "Success!" Petro exclaims, sweaty and somewhat ridiculous, dueling with the emotions of relief and what looks suspiciously like a caffeine-induced jitter. His comrades burst into applause. Of course, it sounds more like a mild thumping in rhythm with someone's enthusiastic pat on the back, rather than the robust cheer of a stadium crowd. But hey, in that moment, it might as well be the biggest victory of the era. There you are, swept up in the sincerity and absurdity of it all, as if you've become part of some whimsical sitcom. And like the best endings to the stories of old, where the underdog triumphs through sheer tenacity, this story leaves you grinning. You can't help but laugh at the delightful chaos of Soviet industry and the resourcefulness of people like Petro, who somehow transform shared annoyance into collective success, one hilariously cut-off rubber duck at a time.
So remember, dear listener, whether you're facing a stubborn office printer, a rebellious coffee machine, or just trying to navigate those quirks of modern life, sometimes all it takes is a bit of ingenuity, a friend with a toolbox, and possibly a rubber ducky. Because if Petro taught us anything, it's that solutions are often just a step away, even if they involve a slightly bizarre arsenal. Stay tuned, for there's more absurdity on the way, and a new chapter just around the corner,
Chapter 20. Natasha and the Revolutionary Red Scarf. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of mildly interesting history. Tonight, we're about to dive into something as warm and fuzzy as that peculiar wool sweater your aunt knitted you for Christmas. Yes, we're exploring 1953 Soviet apartments and the surprisingly social lives of 13-year-old girls like Natasha with aspirations to be the next great revolutionary. Now, you might be wondering, what was life like in an apartment where privacy was as rare as a unicorn sighting? Did the neighbors eavesdrop on you while you practiced your dance moves? Did every conversation sound like a scene from a spy movie? And how does one tie a red scarf with the gravitas of a historical figure while simultaneously attempting to impress classmates filled with a creative spirit that rivals that of a rabid squirrel? But first, take a deep breath, settle in, and let's dim those lights. Maybe turn on a fan for the perfect breeze to carry you to dreamland, where bland Soviet cuisine is merely a figment of your imagination. Tonight, you'll wake up in a time when living in close quarters not only meant sharing walls, but also the occasional grumpy neighbor's music taste. Think kazoo solos under the guise of patriotic fervor. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1953, a year marked by the scent of fresh ink from the latest propaganda posters and the faint echoes of a Soviet anthem humming through the halls of a crammed apartment building. The walls are thin enough to hear what your neighbor had for breakfast 3 days ago. Spoiler alert, potatoes again. As you rise out of your bed, which, if we're being honest, feels more like a sunken ship than a solid foundation, you squint against the early morning light that filters through the dingy curtains. You take a moment to gather your thoughts. Picture Natasha in her crisp brown school dress, trying to muster the fervor of a 13-year-old girl on a mission, albeit one tied rather painfully to her commitment to the pioneer organization. That's right, she's about to rock one of the finest fashion statements of the era, a dainty little red scarf tied around her neck, indicating her allegiance to the state, a universal symbol of belonging, fervor, and probably an impending group project. Let's talk about tying that scarf. Now, Natasha's not just throwing it on willy-nilly. Oh no, that would be as absurd as wearing socks with sandals. She's twisting, looping, and tying that scarf with the conviction of a contestant on a talent show where the prize is a lifetime supply of distraction-free borscht. With each knot she tightens, you can practically hear the surrounding buildings creaking with pride. Or maybe it's from the neighbor's angry pet cat who's suspiciously eyeing the growing assemblage of young pioneers. Down the hallway, the delightful aroma of boiled potatoes and cabbage wafts through the air, mingling with the heavy scent of history, both recent and somewhat grim,
as doors open and plunge into the hustle of living among your fellow comrades. In this post-Stalin era, it feels less like home and more like a competitive reality show where everyone is trying to maintain a semblance of dignity while sharing the same social space. "Did you hear Larissa's rendition of the October Revolution Part 1? Giggles Natasha's friend Lena from the next room. "If I had to rate it, I'd say it's akin to a three-legged dog attempting ballet." Yes, that's right. Laughter is the sound of solidarity in this concrete jungle, which could also double as a low-budget escape room. Now, let's address the elephant, or better yet, the bear, in the room. This isn't just an apartment. It's practically a public forum. There's less privacy here than in a shabby public restroom. The neighbors have a front-row seat to your life, like they're all contestants in the world's most elaborate game of, "Guess what Natasha is doing today?" Just ask Mikhail next door. He's probably sharpening his spy skills by attempting to eavesdrop on her thoughts while polishing his prized collection of World War II memorabilia. And if you think your current home feels cramped, imagine living in a flat where a family of 5 shares a 3-room layout that could barely fit a storage closet. Privacy is practically a myth, like unicorns, housed under the watchful eyes of older women who seem to have the uncanny ability to know exactly what you had for breakfast, even before you've finished chewing. The walls adorned with cheerful posters of happy workers and uniformed children only add to the pressure. It's like living inside a motivational poster that's had too much caffeine. You're motivated to be seen, to be heard, and to hustle hard for that tiny shred of acknowledgement amidst the rubble of bureaucracy and a couple of disgruntled babushkas having their own version of a peaceful protest about the bread lines. Amidst all this social chaos, Natasha finds solace in the act of tying that loud red scarf, transforming her inner musings into a performance that rivals the emotional range of a Shakespearean tragedy. She can't help but admire herself in the tightly cramped mirror. "Not bad," she thinks. "I could lead a rebellion. If only I could keep from tripping on those darn potato peels my mother left lying around." The struggle is real, folks. And as she gingerly heads out the door into the bustling atmosphere, where conversations meld and the buzz of daily life thrums like the beat of a borscht-flavored battery, you can't help but feel a little sorry for the whiskered neighbor's cat who's just tried its luck at making a grand escape through the window, only to be met by the regrettable reality check that is the 4-story drop. So, there you have it, a glimpse into Natasha's day as she dons her revolutionary scarf amidst the colorful characters of Soviet life, balancing the absurdities of childhood aspirations alongside a socially scrutinizing landscape. Who knew apathy disguised as camaraderie could lead to such hilariously nostalgic chaos, much like navigating your way through a family reunion? As we continue down this mildly interesting historical rabbit hole, remember, the next time you feel like a tightly wound spring in your own life, just channel your inner Natasha. After all, few things are more revolutionary than learning to laugh at life's absurdities with your best friend by your side, and a scarf tied steadfastly around your neck. Stay tuned, because our hilarious historical ride isn't over yet. Chapter 21 is just on the horizon, and it promises a wild ride of eclectic stories and unexpected absurdities.
Chapter 21. The Symphony of the Red Scarf.
Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly interesting History Corner. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey more chaotic than your neighbor's holiday decorating efforts. Yes, we're diving into the delightful maze of Soviet school assemblies in the post-Stalin era, where loyalty chants echoed louder than your cat's midnight rambles. Now, let's take a moment to ponder. What was it like to stand in front of rows of neatly dressed children reciting the pioneer oath in unison? Did they ever wonder if their synchronized singing would land them a spot on the Soviet equivalent of America's Got Talent? And what about the uniforms? Were they just substantial serges of fabric designed to absorb all the personality out of a child? Or perhaps they were fashioned from the same material that made those uncomfortable potato sacks where unimagined dreams went to die. Before we dive into the chaos of oversized red scarves and echoing voices, make sure you're tucked in tight. Maybe cover up with that weird Sherpa blanket that your distant relative left you. Dim the lights, crank up that fan just a tad, and let's welcome you onto the slightly uncomfortable yet charming carousel of 1960s Soviet nostalgia. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1965, a year when hairstyles were as meticulously crafted as the walls of your Soviet apartment, and kids were as equally committed to conforming as they were to actually having fun. Your morning begins in a school assembly hall that could double as a soundproof chamber for yelling, boasting an array of identical children lined up like cogs in a rather joyless machine. As you stand in line, you can almost smell the weight of history permeating from the walls, tinged with excitement, confusion, and a very distinct scent of boiled cabbage. You might wonder, how did we begin each morning? Well, often with an anthem that could curdle milk. The girls and boys, all in their crisp uniforms, look like a parade of factory workers, each ready to declare their undying loyalty to the Soviet motherland with as much enthusiasm as a sleepy sloth on a Monday morning. Let's talk a bit about the pioneer oath you're about to recite. Picture this. You're surrounded by a sea of like-minded children, joined together in a moment of equality, all with identical knotted red scarves. It's like team spirit taken a tad too far, but without the tailgating and with an ample supply of propaganda. The sound of your voice mingles with the others, an eerily harmonious cacophony of childhood conviction. Now, between you and me, could you really feel that patriotic exuberance while desperately trying to ignore the fact that you had potato for dinner last night? I willingly give my life to the Soviet Union, you chant, but deep down think, can't I just give it a pass for today and try tomorrow instead? But alas, reciting that oath is as mandatory as querying, "What's for lunch?" during math class. And is there even a plaintive wail escaping any child's lips at lunchtime? Maybe just a low-grade grumble about the brown bread sandwiches stuffed with canned fish that way too ambitious teachers expected kids to enjoy. And what's the deal with that uniform? Seriously, you step out in a well-pressed white shirt and gray trousers that scream labor camp chic, like they were designed in a blackout by a particularly cranky set of fashion critics. You might just be convinced that each button is a tiny talisman of compliance, holding together the emotional fabric of a generation. Now,
let's take a moment to appreciate the creative bonding these children actually shared. Picture it. Hey, Ivan, did you see Mikhail get his scarf caught in the ventilation as he tried to answer the teacher? Classic. This unexpected camaraderie is reminiscent of modern-day moments when your coworker accidentally spills coffee on himself during a crucial presentation, and you share an understanding glance of mutual human embarrassment. So yes, hilarity thrives even amidst conformity. But the little things? Ah, yes. Amidst the chaos, the rustling of wrappers in pockets becomes a sort of war drum signaling the fate of today's lunch. Children peer out through their red scarves like secret agents sizing up an enemy for potential cookie heists. Forget classified files. They plan snack raids with all the sophistication of a military general plotting an invasion. And as each child stands at attention, trying to maintain focus while contemplating the intimidating poster of Lenin looming over them, marked "Think of the Motherland," you can feel their little minds transforming, bit by bit, into miniature bureaucrats. I must remain calm and collected, they think, all while secretly wishing for a different kind of hero. A superhero who rescues them with pizza rolls and free time. The assembly drags on, and you might be thinking, this feels like a rehearsal for the world's longest play, where the script involves chanting, clapping, and pretending the food pyramid includes potato at the top. How many times do we have to recite this pledge, you sigh internally, only to remind yourself that compliance is key, and you can always add charisma, like a pinch of salt, to your uniform life. Sometimes the sheer absurdity of it all hits you. Your neighbor's kid, standing next to you, suddenly exhales a dramatic sigh. Tomorrow, I will make a cake from nothing but dreams and a modicum of sugar, he declares, eyes sparkling. And just like that, you realize that the spirit of rebellion is alive and slightly doughy. So there you have it, an immersive dive into the mildly interesting world of Soviet youngsters and their careening adventures into conformity, learning, and sneaky snack plans. Hold on tight, folks. There's plenty more mildly bizarre adventures ahead in this historical journey. Stay tuned, because Chapter 22 promises more outrageous tales where you'll again question the whimsy of history, while snickering intermittently at charming idiosyncrasies where laughter and absurdity are the real champions. Chapter 22, The Mathematical Meltdown. Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly interesting history corner. Tonight we find ourselves in a classroom more packed than your closet post-holiday season. It's a Soviet school in 1965, where the poetry's as dense as those dreadful math problems, and the teachers have the enthusiasm of a tired potato. But first, have you ever wondered just how much fun it would be to memorize a Pushkin poem while trying to solve complex math equations that would make even Einstein blink twice? What if your idea of fun was being stuck in a classroom for hours, calculating the trajectory of a flying tomato? Does anyone else think that studying algebra while reciting nationalistic poetry sounds like a particularly stressful karaoke night? All right, dim the lights, grab a cozy blanket, maybe that one your pet loves to shed on, and let's plunge into the world of Soviet schooling, where dreams of freedom were often swapped for the cold embrace of a math textbook. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1965, where the smell of chalk dust mingles with a phantom odor of boiled cabbage wafting from the cafeteria, causing your stomach to question your life choices. The light flickers over a small desk, cluttered with stacks of paper containing mathematical problems that look more like riddles from some intergalactic dungeon than actual math. Your desk, slightly wobbly, is accompanied by a chair that seems to scream every time you shift your weight. What a joy! Now, let's talk about Natasha, shall we? Picture her, hunched over, furiously scribbling down equations while simultaneously trying to memorize verses of Pushkin's poetry. It's almost an Olympic sport, the way she balances the painstaking demands of Soviet education with the creative artistic endeavors of her country's literary giants. You might wonder, how does one mentally switch gears from calculating the speed of a runaway locomotive to sweet verses about love and loss? It's like being at a party where your ex shows up with your favorite snack, and your dog decides to perform an interpretive dance in protest. Pure chaos. As Natasha writes, her pencil dances across the paper, and she mutters to herself. Each word she speaks sounds like a little war cry against the oppressive weight of her curriculum, one that seems more designed to churn out adept engineers and scientists than creative thinkers. It's like being told you're a key ingredient in a borscht recipe, but constantly being fished out of the pot for not boiling properly. Around her sit fellow students, each ensconced in their own bubble of math-induced confusion. Dmitri, what's wrong? You might ask, as he stares at his paper as if it were a witch's curse. I can't figure out why it takes 5 potatoes to bake a loaf of bread, he responds with the enthusiasm of a soggy herring. And honestly, who could blame him? When faced with the complex mathematics of socially engineered
Education, even a potato, could feel overwhelmed.
Now, picture the soundscape of this classroom. The scratching of pencils on paper, the intermittent groans of students trying to decipher whether X equals the number of tomatoes in their lunch, or if it's just an elaborate metaphor for their feelings. This cacophony is punctuated by the teacher's stern voice droning on like a radio stuck on a tragic love ballad. Remember, children, she declares, we are training to be the future of our motherland, and the future requires a true knowledge of both math and poetry. If that doesn't feel like an exertion of symbolic labor, then nothing does. It's like she's asking them to swim the length of a pool while juggling, in a 3-piece suit on roller skates. As the class progresses, Natasha senses the eye of the clock ticking away. Will she ever escape this vortex of numbers and rhymes? She steals glances at the large poster of Lenin looking over the classroom. May I find
Inspiration in your gaze, comrade? She muses silently, as if expecting him to intercede with the solutions for this impending math disaster. When lunchtime finally arrives, bless the universe, the kids pile out of the classroom faster than a group of cats hearing the sound of a can opener. The pressure of solving the universe's equations temporarily forgotten, they dash towards the cafeteria, driven by a desire for anything other than the inevitable brown bread sandwich with mystery filling. You might think of lunch as a normal social affair, but in this world, it's a rather comical free-for-all. I swear, I saw it move, a kid shouts, pointing at his lunch. This potato is the reincarnation of my uncle. Another reaches for a soft-boiled egg, squinting as if guessing its age requires some kind of math skill she didn't master. And remember those stern warnings about the virtues of modesty? Forget it. I've got 5 cabbage rolls and a dream, cries Mikhail, triumphantly brandishing his lunch like a trophy. Meanwhile, Natasha finds herself wondering if now would be an appropriate time to set her math problems on fire for the drama. But amidst all this chaos, something happens. Laughter erupts. The bonds formed in perceived misery create a shared resilience. Who knew that a school education could include giggle fits over perplexing potato sandwiches and learned camaraderie over math-induced tears? They might be being measured for their future roles as engineers, but here they're learning something truly revolutionary. The art of surviving their education with a pinch of humor and a splash of creativity. So, dear listener, aside from the rigor of Soviet schooling, let's take a moment to appreciate this, the resilience of youthful imaginations trapped in a whirlwind of algebra and poetry. Remember, life's comedy unfolds amid absurdity. Embrace the potato-shaped chaos whenever possible. Stay tuned, because Chapter 23 promises to delve into even more mildly interesting tales, where history meets hilarity, and where the inner workings of Soviet schooling might just take an unexpected turn down memory lane. Chapter 23, The Cosmic Comfort of Soviet Cinema. Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly interesting history corner, where history is served with a side of absurdity, like your favorite comfort food, only less likely to cause food poisoning. Tonight, we're diving into something almost as monumental as trying to assemble IKEA furniture after a long day: watching Soviet television in the 1960s. Trust me, it's about to get more cosmic than your Aunt Olga at her annual egg salad competition. Now, let's be honest. Have you ever found yourself staring at a television screen while experiencing existential dread over a snack that resembles a bizarre science project? What if I told you that families back in the day gathered around their flickering screens to marvel at documentaries of their great nation's space achievements? Picture this: a small living room where you're crammed in tighter than a sardine in a tin can, everyone hoping the TV doesn't blink out while Uncle Boris attempts to dunk his borscht. A culinary disaster waiting to happen. As we get comfy in this little time capsule, I invite you to dim the lights, toss a blanket over your legs, the one with more pills than your medicine cabinet, and let's embrace the peculiar charm of Soviet life, where the entirety of your privacy could be measured by the distance from the nearest surveillance camera. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1973. The aroma of boiled potatoes wafts through your living room like a personal assistant who only doubles
as a smoky meal prank. You glance around and see your family huddled together like a pack of misfit penguins. On the clunky TV in front of you, something glorious is happening. The state-controlled channel is featuring a documentary about Soviet accomplishments in space. Let's take a moment to appreciate the serious milestones of your motherland. You're being treated to footage of rockets that seem to be built with the same care as a child's wooden toy, zooming through the cosmos like overzealous party balloons. "Look, kids, there goes a rocket," your father shouts, sounding prouder than a rooster in a room full of hens. That's our glorious motherland traversing the stars. But while you sit there, rapt attention glued to the TV, how much do you actually know about what they feed astronauts? Those space statistics are thicker than your Aunt Paulina's knit sweater from last Christmas. Were they actually munching on freeze-dried cabbage while orbiting Earth? Can you imagine the cosmic side-eye those astronauts give each other over a bowl of rehydrated soup? It's like trying to have a fine dining experience using only camping gear. Here's your galactic asparagus soup. Enjoy tasting the future while we pray that it doesn't float into the cabin. Back in the living room, the conversation quickly veers into territory that's more concerning than the state of your cousin Sergei's haircut. "Did you see that rocket? I bet it doesn't even fit on our street," your mother exclaims, and everyone else nods, more out of instinct than actual agreement. Now, let's take a look at your apartment, shall we? It's not just tiny. It's basically a functional shoebox with walls. If you tiptoe to the left, you might accidentally poke your finger through a wall that could be on the world's thinnest list, possibly next to a piece of paper. The walls are adorned with posters of cosmonauts and heroic scenes of space exploration. And the couch, well, let's just say it's convincingly modeled after a cement block. You thought the sound of Cousin Mikhail eating his boiled potatoes was bad. Try sitting through a family debate about which rocket really represents the spirit of Soviet innovation, while the television blares Soviet anthems louder than your neighbor's arguments. An immersive experience indeed. Each note reverberates off the walls like a patriotic echo, made even more intense by Sergei's attempt to imitate the blasting off sound effects. "Meow," he shouts, flailing his arms as if he's trying to take flight while sitting on the couch. A gesture met with a disapproving glare from your grandfather. The program continues, narrating with pride that Russia was the first to send a man into space. You can't help but contrast that with the daily struggle of getting out of the apartment without tripping over the cat and the stray shoes that seem to breed overnight. Was there an underground shoe cabal forming? As the blaring theme music filters through the room, your mother thinks this is the opportune moment to ask, "Do you think we could all fit in one of those rockets?" A moment of silence falls before your father replies, "Only if we lose those extra pounds misplaced under all the borscht." To which your mother replies with a glare that coldly states, "Is the rocket on TV also diet-friendly?" Oh, the backyard theories and conjectures. How embarking on a cosmic journey might serve as a better escape plan than this small apartment, where everyone's built-in speaker system, your uncle's critique of the cold soup, can be heard throughout the block.
And let's not forget the satisfaction that comes with gathering all of your family to watch something that, a surprising twist, actually draws your attention away from the everyday drudgery of washing the same bowl for weeks and the impending mystery of that fish your brother cooked that one summer. It makes for a treasured memory of absurdity meshed with gravity-defying patriotism. By the end of the program, you realize that the simplicity of watching the launch of a rocket gives a sense of collective hope, even if you're doing it in an apartment that's only marginally larger than a shoebox. And while the space exploration may seem inconceivable, the thought of setting off on an adventure far away from your family's heavy opinions feels quite
inviting. So, as you nestle deeper into your blanket cocoon, lost in thoughts of the stars, remember this: even in cramped apartments, buzzing with opinions thicker than the wallpaper, the wonders of the cosmos await you, right behind the glass screen that's always 2 degrees away from disaster. Stay tuned, because Chapter 24 promises even more mildly interesting tales where history and humor collide and the absurdity of life keeps flying us toward new adventures. Chapter 24: The Struggle of Soviet Sounds. Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly interesting history corner, where history is juicier than your Aunt Lena's stewed cabbage recipe, and also far less likely to trigger a family feud. Tonight, we're stepping into a time period that's as amusing as trying to assemble an IKEA chair while half asleep. The music scene during the post-Stalin era in the Soviet Union. Buckle up, because it's about to get groovy in a way that will leave you questioning fashion choices and cultural norms. Now, let's set the scene. Imagine you're in your little Soviet apartment, where the walls are thinner than the puns at a misfiring comedy club. What's that faint sound you hear? Is it the gentle hum of a distant airplane? Nope, that's just your neighbor watching the same state-approved sitcom for the 600th time. Or maybe it's the unexpected screech of a catfight, a la your Uncle Igor's attempt to impress the neighbor lady with his less-than-melodic karaoke rendition of Yesterday. Ever think you'd be dreaming of releasing the new Top 40 hits in a space where the only music played sounds like it was recorded in the 50s, using potatoes as microphones? Now that's a modern struggle. Can you picture it? There's an undercurrent of rebellion that buzzes within the air, thicker than a bowl of grandma's kasha. How do you connect with the outside world when all you've got is the state-sponsored radio that treats Western music like a bear treats honey? Very, very cautiously. Imagine having to go through life without hearing the classics. It's like camping in the great outdoors, but the only snacks you have are old, stale bread crusts. You've got the unfortunate luck of being in a tiny apartment with a family as curious as cats, endlessly wondering what the city is hiding behind those bleak concrete blocks. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1975, smack dab in the middle of the Soviet Union's era of stagnation. But hey, at least it's not freezing outside. Well, at least not in an ice-covered, this will chill you to the bone way. The air carries the scent of boiled potatoes, though they highly lack the enthusiasm of a Sunday roast. You glance around at your living space, which feels like a museum exhibit dedicated to the concept of cramped living. This is where optimism goes to take a nap.
Now let's talk about the old cassette player sitting in the corner, the pride of your collection filled with a variety of mismatched tapes, which probably fit together like a jigsaw puzzle designed by someone with a severe grudge against humanity. And there it is, a vinyl record, stamped as a bootleg copy of anything remotely Western, spinning in a passionate casualness, as if putting on a show just for you. Sure, the sound quality is about as delightful as a malfunctioning hairdryer, but the music is something magical. Ah, yes, this is your little taste of rebellion,
A tiny flicker of uncensored culture poking through the grim clouds of oppression, like a particularly cheeky sunbeam trying to ruin your carefully curated nap time. As the crackling music slips through the cracks of your dilapidated walls, you feel a connection to a world far removed from the monotony of routine Soviet life. It's an intriguing act of cultural defiance, like sending secret love letters through a bustling post office, knowing they'll be opened, dissected, and frowned upon by the very grumpy clerks keeping the system tally. What's that? Oh, that's just the neighbors eavesdropping, their eyes practically glued to your window, like they're trying to catch the latest episode of As the Apartment Turns. Now, the tunes aren't exactly as polished as a professional performance, more akin to listening to a cat snarling while tangoing with a blender. Ever hear All Along the Watchtower, covered by a band using a harmonica made from a tin can? Well, here's your chance. Imagine the rasping guitars mimicking a rusty hinge as they wrestle with the haunting voice of your flatmates crooning instead. It's part heart, part heartbreak, especially on days when the music clearly reminds you that love isn't more than a state-sponsored sentiment shrouded in irony. Let's not forget the delightfully uncomfortable act of gathering your friends to listen, a gathering more awkward than watching elderly relatives compete to see who can tell the longest, most pointless story. As the music keeps spinning, a tension builds in the air thicker than a pot of overcooked dumplings. Do we risk it? Will they hear us? Your best friend whispers conspiratorially, as if you're cranking some illicit drug into the air, instead of simply sharing an inspiring rock ballad. But still, there's something unites you all, the wild spirit of youth, creativity whispering like a rebellious wind around the corners of your shared existence. You lean in a little closer, as if the secret of the universe resides in the scratchy tones infiltrating your minds. Suddenly, a plucky lead singer breaks out into a twangy guitar riff that communicates more than 1,000 state-sanctioned concerts. It sings of longing, of the freedom that feels like it just slipped through your fingers, like trying to catch fresh snowflakes with gloved hands on a winter night. And now, as you drift to the subconscious music echoing in your head, remember that even in the tightest of spaces, where secrets are murmured and whispers become anthems, there lies a spark of rebellion. For every bootleg record that spins on a tired old player, there's a generation dreaming of freedom and searching for a soundtrack to their own existence. So, wrap yourself in your blanket tighter than your half-remembered parenting advice from the 60s, and rest assured that tomorrow brings another average day in the land where silence is golden, but music is whispered rebellion. Because in the world of the Soviet apartment, sometimes you just have to crank up those crackly tunes
and remind the universe that life, despite its many thumping absurdities, is worth dancing to, if only in your confined space of questionable sound quality. Stay tuned for Chapter 25, where the adventures become even more mildly interesting.
Chapter 25, Kitchen Table Chronicles.
Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly interesting history corner, where reality is less likely to make you cringe than your cousin's karaoke nights. Tonight, we find ourselves nestled cozily around a kitchen table in a Moscow apartment, a setting more intimate than a first date with a particularly nosy tax officer. We're diving into the vibrant conversations of the 1950s to the 80s, a time when your neighbors weren't just next door. They were practically sitting in your lap, giving unsolicited advice on your cabbage soup. Now, make sure your lights are dimmed, your fan thoughtfully positioned to mimic a charming breeze, and above all, get comfy, because it's about to get real and mildly absurd. Just imagine, if you will, that you somehow decided to assemble IKEA furniture in a dark corner while hosting an awkward reunion with your high school friends. Would you risk doing it in a tiny Soviet apartment? Did you even have room for shame in your communal kitchen? What are the chances you mistook your neighbor's cheery banter for actual interest in your life, only to learn they just really wanted to borrow sugar? Let's delve into this post-Stalin era, where every whisper mattered and privacy was as fictional as an honest politician. Congratulations! You've just woken up in a cozy kitchen that, for all intents and purposes, appears to be the communal brain of the apartment complex. It's 1965. The air is thick with uncertainty and the scent of overcooked borscht. Trust me, it's not a delightful aroma so much as we'll get through this together. The sun spills in through a window sealed tighter than a well-guarded secret, letting just enough light illuminate the scruffy table where you and your closest friends have chosen to gather. Here we dive into the delicious stew of life. Picture this: a table adorned with an assortment of mismatched bowls and plates, more akin to an arts and crafts project than a dining setup. There's a low simmering pot of something that could only be described as an ambiguous meat concoction. Spoiler alert: the mystery meat is just as likely to be chicken as it is to be a sneak entry from the neighbor's cat. Friends huddle excitedly, their conversations an energetic dance of intrigue and scandal. You can practically taste the tension. Their laughter is loud enough to make even the curtain rods quiver in fear. Is that a cat scoffing at the whole situation? Or a neighbor trying to discern whether they just overheard plans for a revolution? Of course, the most revolutionary act right now is debating the best way to dismantle an old-fashioned radio that might have been smuggled from the West. Each friend shares the kind of gossip that feels like the most precious of treasures. It's as though your group's ability to engage in this joyful banter could create a Disneyland of rebellion against the suffocating grip of state narrative. You're elbow deep in comforting chaos. Endless rounds of, "Did you hear what happened to Boris?" and "I think Yelena's potato salad has too much salt," because honestly, someone had to say it. Sipping your tea, which is suspiciously weaker than your best intentions to be a responsible adult, You observe the back and forth with the intensity of a contestant on a quiz show who forgot the answers. And there it is. The topic steers toward the titular assignation of privacy, or rather, the distinct absence of it. Living in a Soviet apartment is a bit like living in a community center being run by an overly enthusiastic committee. The excitement is constant, but the boundaries never really formed. You hear tales of how a light bulb, regulated by state-approved wattage, can cause a neighbor 2 floors up to become privy to your innermost thoughts. Ever considered running away with your thoughts? You can't simply retreat to your inner sanctum, because everyone knows that you can hear the toilet flush 3 stories down. And in Soviet kitchens, whispers are the acceptable currency for secret conversations. As plates of food are passed around like prized possessions, every shared morsel brings a shared bond, deeper than a Soviet state-approved plotline. Can you imagine cooking breakfast with the thrill of eavesdropping on your very own soap opera? What if you mistook someone's attempt to fry eggs for a high-stakes negotiation to fundamentally change the Soviet philosophy around breakfast foods? And then it shifts. The conversations veer into the territory of concern. Rumors of upcoming inspections, your neighbor's cat showing an alarming amount of sentience, and the constant paranoia that perhaps someone is secretly reporting on your display of outrageous optimism. The kitchen suddenly feels like a pressure cooker. Tension simmers while you multitask between sipping tea and averting your gaze from the walls that seem to possess more ears than a state-sponsored listener convention. But then, amidst the comedic intensity, your friend leans in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "What if we actually became food critics?" he suggests, and you can't help but snort in laughter. This adds an extra layer of absurdity. Culinary revolutionaries armed with forks and an overabundance of opinions. Soon the kitchen erupts in laughter as wild ideas flourish. Save the state-approved potato salad from its neglect. Let's inscribe cookbooks about what lies beneath the coveted meat, and develop recipes that push the limits of culinary creativity. As the evening rolls on, a realm of friendship born from experimentation and shared exhaustion wraps around you like a familiar blanket, one that is not entirely free of cat hair. It feels comforting in the face of uncertainty, because if there's anything life in the post-Stalin era taught you, it's that laughter, and perhaps the curious blend of cabbage and questionable meat, is the essence of survival. So here you are, amidst the buoyant chaos, as the steam of shared stories mingles with the scent of meals that look slightly questionable, but feel overwhelmingly right. As your eyelids grow heavy, you're vividly reminded that in this small kitchen prison of camaraderie, privacy might be a myth, but joy, laughter, and community can fill any gaps in life's poorly designed wall. Stay tuned for Chapter 26, where we humorously tackle the intriguing world of Soviet fashion, ensuring you never look at a fur hat the same way again. And now, as the corridor grows quiet, as the shared kitchen goes still at last, and as the faint hum of the building settles into its nightly rhythm, let your breath slow, and let the weight of the communal world drift gently behind you. Tonight, we walked the narrow halls of a Soviet communalka, a place where privacy was borrowed in minutes, where space belonged to everyone and no one, and where life unfolded loudly, inconveniently, and endlessly. We watched neighbors negotiate over stoves and sinks. Families share rooms no bigger than a modern walk-in closet, and strangers learn to coexist with patience they didn't always have. We saw the peeling wallpaper layered with decades of lives, the flickering bulb that refused to fully brighten the space, and the corridor that heard every argument, every joke, every sigh of exhaustion at the end of another long day. We felt the shared frustrations, the small joys tucked between hardships, and the strange comfort of community forged by necessity, not choice. And yet, within all that crampedness and clatter, there was resilience, quiet, stubborn, human resilience. People endured ration lines, shortages, thin walls, and long waits for the bathroom, but they also shared meals, stories, warmth, and moments of laughter that softened the grayness of life. So now, as you lie in your quiet private room, wrapped in soft blankets, breathing clean air, take a moment to be grateful for walls that belong only to you, for doors that close, for silence you don't have to fight for, and for comfort earned not through struggle, but through time. Let the communal corridor fade. Let the noise dim. Let your body rest. You're safe. You've done enough. And everything else can wait until morning. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift gently into sleep. Good night.